Chapter 668. The vast army retreated 100 miles away, but that didn't mean they were retreating. They only watched from afar and rested for the time being. When the time came, they would send out their troops. The demon generals were indignant, but they didn't dare to show it in front of Lord Vast Expanse. He could only stand by his side with an ashen face, watching his lord sit on the throne, his body slightly leaning forward as he stared unblinkingly at Xianxia, who was even further away. At such a distance, only profound realm cultivators could barely see Xianxia's movements. And that was when the other party didn't intentionally interfere. But the vanguard and vanguard were all killed by one person. It was the greatest humiliation the vast army had ever experienced in 1,000 years. Not all the demon generals could understand their lord's actions. They thought that even if their lord didn't kill him because he cherished talent, he should have captured him and slowly thought about the future. But now, after making such a huge sacrifice, they actually let him go. Didn't that person die in vain? These doubts and dissatisfaction didn't only exist in the hearts of the demon generals. The necromancers of the lifeless immortal sect also thought the same. Their sacrifices couldn't compare to the soldiers of the vast army, but in the hearts of the necromancers, the life of one of them was more precious than 100 demon soldiers. Now the necromancers were in the middle of the army surrounding Xianxia. After a long silence, someone finally whispered, "The two of them died just like that." After saying that, he looked at his peers. He couldn't help but ask, "Your Honor, why did Lord Vast Expanse?" Xianxia looked in Lord Vast Expanse's direction, then looked around. The demons watching the battle didn't retreat, and their numbers seemed to have increased. It was as if the previous battle had made them more interested and curious about the outcome of this battle. He understood a little, then shook his head. "I always tell you to think more before doing things. You have to see the inside story. This is a good opportunity. Think about it carefully." The necromancers were confused, then fell silent. But the necromancer who asked before thought for a while, then blinked. "Your Honor is saying that there's an inside story?" "In my opinion there is." Xianxia nodded, then squinted his eyes and looked in Xianxia's direction. But at such a distance he couldn't see anything. "We know a little about Xianxia." He retracted his gaze. "I've told you about what he did on land. That's why we tried to communicate with him first. We don't want to be enemies with this person unless it's absolutely necessary. You have escaped from death time and time again. You are extremely scheming and come up with many strange plans. All of you usually think highly of yourselves, but think about whether you can reach his level." The necromancers were indignant. It was naturally uncomfortable for them to think about the enemy who had just killed two of their fellow disciples. But no one spoke. Even if he was indignant, he had to admit defeat. The most terrifying thing about this person is that he dares to take risks. He dared to risk his own life. He had died once in the city of Wei and again in Yunshan. However, in the end they all survived. Now think about what he did in the past and look at the present. Xianxia sighed. He has a formation, but he doesn't defend it. After revealing an opening, he charged over like a brainless warrior. It's not incomprehensible for a normal person to do so. He's already at death's door. But he was originally waiting here. He wouldn't not know that an army was coming, so he must have some strange plan. I don't believe that such a person came to seek death. He must have done this as part of a plan. And it might not be his true body that came. He is at the Shi mysterious state and has the ability to turn his soul into a real body. His formation I was less than 100 miles away from the center of the army. It's very likely that he sent an avatar for us to kill. It's fine if it's someone else. Against someone like him, would you dare to kill him if he was sent to you?" The necromancers looked at each other. The person who spoke before moved his mouth as if he wanted to refute. But he couldn't find anything to say. He could only say, "Then Lord Haohan, if I can think of this, how can Lord Haohan not think of it?" Xianxia shook his head. "He has led the vast sea for 1,000 years. He isn't as bold as others think. Other than the unlucky Lord of West Sea, none of the dragon kings on the sea are easy to deal with." Xianxia looked in Lord Haohan's direction. He hesitated for a while and said, "He must have other considerations. Mulian, tell us." The person he called Mulian was the necromancer Daoist Mulian who had spoken before. Being called out, he looked a little flattered. He didn't dare to be careless. He held his breath and frowned, thinking for a while. Then he looked at the demons around him. Suddenly his eyes lit up. Lord, are you saying, the people in the vast army all look indignant? Clearly they view the battle just now as a great humiliation. Previously, the reason why His Honor persuaded Lord Haohan to let us make the first move was also because Lord Haohan felt that even if we won, we would still be ridiculed by these demon kings. But Li Yunxin charged in himself just now. Not only did the front line not stop him, but he also rushed to the front of the carriage. Now that this happened, no matter what we do, it will be a joke. If Lord Haohan thinks the same as Lord Haohan and thinks that this is Li Yunxin's clone that came to him on purpose to kill him and lure him into a trap, why don't we pretend that we appreciate each other? Even though we can't save our face, we can at least gain a good reputation for appreciating talent. Qin Fengzi smiled. Think so too. It's a pity. I want to see what kind of shocking move Li Yunxin will make if Lord Haohan really fell for the trap and killed him. The vast army rested for about a day. During this time they sent 15 scouts to report the movements of the East Sea Army. After reading about 40 rounds of urgent military reports, Lord Haohan furrowed his brows. Something didn't seem right. They had sent their troops 2 days ago. He went to Li Yunxin and Lord Haohan went to the west. Because it was said that the red-clothed witch Red Lady had also gone there. It seemed that she had been entrusted by Li Yunxin. That witch was at the peak of the profound realm. If she had met up with Li Yunxin, he wouldn't have been able to kill them 1 day ago. But he had actually sent away such a great helper. Qin Fengzi thought he had guessed Lord Haohan's intention correctly, but he had missed one point. Li Yunxin's unusual behavior meant that he was very confident in this place. Because of these factors, Lord Haohan couldn't kill him easily. According to the military report, the East Sea Army had rushed to the west in the first half of the day, and it seemed that they really wanted to stop Red Lady. However, half a day ago after the battle with Li Yunxin, the East Sea Army suddenly stopped at the bottom of the sea. They stopped for a day and a half. By the time Lord Haohan saw the military report, they still hadn't broken camp. In the worst-case scenario, like what the generals around Lord Haohan said, Lord Haohan didn't want to help. Instead, he had to wait for Red Lady to come to Li Yunxin's rescue, and the East Sea Army would be attacked from 2 sides. But the Dragon King had a different opinion. Although he and Lord Haohan didn't get along, he knew that Lord Haohan wasn't a fool. With such an obvious attitude, even if his vast army was removed, there were still the remaining Dragon Kings of the 6 seas. If the 6 Dragon Kings knew what he had done, how could they let him live? Even if they didn't attack him together, they would scatter and let the East Sea be turned upside down by Li Yunxin and that witch. So, what was the reason? The Dragon King pondered for nearly 4 hours before he got another report. It was said that a day and a half ago, someone rushed from Penglai and caught up with the East Sea Army. Only then did the Dragon King of the East Sea stop. The person's cultivation level was so high that the scouts couldn't see through it. Lord Haohan realized that the person might be the counselor that Lord Haohan had hidden. The counselor from the land who was said to have a profound cultivation level in mind. Did something big happen for him to suddenly chase after them? In fact, the Dragon King was only half right. Lord Haohan, who he couldn't figure out, was also in a terrible situation. East Sea had sent 25,000 troops, and now the army was stationed in the Sea Tiger Gorge. The Sea Tiger Gorge was similar to the garrison fortress of the dynasty on land. Usually there were only a few soldiers stationed there. In times of war, it could be used as a temporary resting place for the army and a supply point for the rear. The Sea Tiger Gorge was wide but not deep. It was more like an elongated basin. Lord Haohan's tent was in the middle of the gorge, surrounded by elite soldiers. Scouts and sentries were sent out all over the sea, as if they were facing a formidable enemy, or as if the army had some secret they didn't want others to know. In fact, what they didn't want others to know was Lord Haohan's current appearance. Inside the anti-crystal light shield of the central military tent, he had a bitter face and cupped his hands. He leaned forward slightly, like a child who had made a mistake and was being scolded by his teacher. And opposite him, it was Lady Mingyue Shangguanyu. The ground was a mess. Cups, documents, armors and weapons all rolled on the ground. The cups and documents were torn to pieces and the armors and weapons were broken. Although the sea was not good at smelting, there were still energy practitioners. Lord Haohan was the lord of Penglai and East Sea. Although he didn't have as many treasures as a nouveau riche like Li Yunxin, He was not inferior in quality. But now, the weapons and armors that he had always regarded as treasures and cleaned by himself every day were destroyed, but he couldn't even vent his anger. You trapped me in East Sea. You trapped me here. Shangguanyu bit her lips and looked at him, her eyes red. Because she was still young and beautiful, she looked like a sad, beautiful girl. What did you say to me when I first came to Penglai? Zhao Zijing, what did you say to me? What did you promise me? Lord Haohan raised his hand to wipe his forehead, lowered his body and murmured. Yes, what is it? Shangguanyu grabbed a copper paperweight on the table beside her and threw it on his forehead. With a bang, a corner of the copper paperweight was flattened, but there was not even a mark on Lord Haohan's forehead. Chapter 669. The paperweight fell to the ground. Shangguanyu suddenly cried, You are hiding? You are still hiding. Dong Haijun hurriedly said, Oh, but this... He hurriedly bent down to pick up the paperweight, bowed and sent it to Shangguanyu. Then he retreated to a distance. Little Yui, hit me again. Before he could finish his words, Shangguanyu grabbed the paperweight and threw it at his face again. The paperweight made a whistling sound and was immediately smashed. Lord Donghai's face was immediately covered in blood, and a large gash was left on his cheek. He hissed in pain. But he did not move. He only said, Good hit, good hit. However, Shangguanyu still said, Tell me, what did you promise me in the past? Dong Haijun sighed with a bitter face. I'll tell you. When you came to Penglai, I told you. You told me that it was very difficult to meet Shinryu, didn't you? Shangguanyu stared at him, tears rolling down from her eyes like mermaid pearls. You told me that the situation was unclear. You said that Li Yunxin was involved with too many forces and that it would be disadvantageous to him if I did that. You told me to temporarily settle down on Penglai Island and you would find a way. Zhao Zijing, are you the one who said this? Dong Haijun sighed. Yes. Shangguanyu covered her mouth with her hand, turned her face away and closed her eyes. After that day I didn't have the face to see him. I believed your sweet words back then. I thought you were a good person different from Li Chunfeng. Zhao Zijing, I didn't know that you were also such a person. Tell me, what are you going to do with these people? What are you going to do? To save him or to harm him? Dong Haijun opened his mouth. You don't have to say it. If it weren't for the news spreading across the ocean, I would still be on your Penglai Island, waiting for you to tell me every day what he did today and what he would do tomorrow. If it weren't for Jiner, I wouldn't even know that you were killed by him. Shangguanyu put down her hand and seemed to stop crying. But a few teardrops stuck to her eyelashes like dew. She looked at him as if she was seeing him for the first time. Say something. Why aren't you saying anything? Lord Donghai sighed and said, You didn't ask me to say it. All right, little you, listen to me first. He carefully stepped forward and reached out to hold Shangguanyu's shoulder, asking her to sit down first. But just as he was about to touch it, Shangguanyu slapped his wrist and broke it. Get lost. Lord Donghai was stunned for a moment. He gritted his teeth and cold sweat rolled down his forehead. Fine. I'll go out first. Where are you going? Shangguanyu glared at her, tears falling from her eyelashes. Tell me. Lord Donghai was in a daze again. Only then did he slap his own face with his broken wrist. Yes, I'm stupid. I'll say it now, Xiaoye. I didn't lie to you. You still dare to say it. The Lord of the Eastern Sea hurriedly shook his hands, but they were already wobbly and now they seemed fake. Oh no. When I first saw you I fell in love with you. I thought you were the treasure of the Eastern Sea. The treasure of the whole world. Little you, the Eastern Sea, no, the 9 seas, whatever you want, I will give my life to get it for you. When I met you, I didn't want any power or state anymore. I also felt happy to be able to live in seclusion with you like those people on the land. I didn't lie to you, not even half a word. I said that in the future you would study and practice swordsmanship and I would farm and grow vegetables to support you like the people on the land. That was also true. You said you didn't want to care about the people in the world because you thought they were too bad. I said I didn't want to care about them either. It's best for us to be ordinary. That was also true. I didn't lie to you at all. He said this hurriedly and quickly, afraid that Shangguanyu would interrupt him. At this point Shangguanyu cried again. It's your words, it's your words. You're just like Li Chunfeng. You say nice things but you do things. All the men in the world are like you. Like this. You used those words to trap me here. You and him are both. Lord Donghai was so anxious that he was about to cry. Xiaoya, how am I like him? You said he said sweet things to you on Mount Yunshan, but in the end he just wanted to use you to do things. But what did I use you to do? What I said. Then what did you promise me? Lord Donghai was stunned again. After a while he said, about Li Yunxin. Sai Xiaoya, I did it all for you. At this time he was also a little anxious. He straightened his body, took 2 steps in the tent and turned around. You came to the East Sea and wanted to go to the Dragon Island because of him. But you don't know Lord Shinryu's temper. You said something wrong and you might die on the Dragon Island. How could I ask you to go to the Dragon Island? You asked me to help him, but do you know how much trouble he has? Can help him. I helped him for you and it's nothing even if I die. But I'm afraid that it's not enough for me to die and I'll drag you into it. If you die, how can I let you be in any danger? I thought about it. In the end he realized that Li Yunxin was the one who had wronged him. As long as he's alive you'll think about him every day. I'm afraid that if he causes trouble, you'll be the one to bear the trouble. When Lord Donghai mentioned Li Yunxin, his face became fierce again. Then what can I do? Kill him, of course. Once he's dead your troubles will be gone, then you can get rid of the troubles on the ocean. I won't have to worry about anything and Shinryu can't do anything to me. Then we can find a place just like what we talked about before. A man farming and a woman weaving, living a simple life, isn't that good? After saying all this he looked at Shangguanyu bitterly. Little you, tell me. What did I do wrong? Shangguanyu was still crying before. But after he said all this he stopped crying. She frowned. With tears on her face she frowned and looked at Lord Donghai carefully. Her strange look made the fierce expression on Lord Donghai's face disappear, and it was replaced by anxiety. Little you, I'm not angry at you. What you said, Shangguanyu stared at him, is it from your heart? Lord Donghai blinked in confusion. Yes. Then do you know, I'll ask you again and you better answer me, do you know that Li Yunxin is my son? Yes, I do. Didn't you tell me earlier? Shangguanyu opened her mouth slightly and staggered 2 steps back as if she couldn't support her body. Lord Donghai was about to step forward. But she stopped him with a wave of her hand, as if she was disgusted. After a while she said in a trembling voice, then can you understand one thing? He is my son and I am his mother. I hate Li Chunfeng not only because he used me but also because he didn't care about my son's life and he didn't allow me to care about his life. If you kill him I can only see you as my enemy for the rest of my life. Lord Donghai opened his eyes wide and frowned. Not because he used you, lied to you? I know he is your son. But he brought us trouble. Except for him you have me by your side, so what can't be solved? What can I do? Shangguanyu was silent. She was so silent that Lord Donghai didn't know what to do. Finally he smiled sadly. You mean you can't understand the love between mother and son? Lord Donghai blinked his eyes. You will get over it one day. Shangguanyu suddenly laughed out loud. Ha! Good, it's my own fault again. Ha! She laughed so hard that her whole body trembled and she took 2 steps back. I was on the land. I was on the land, surrounded by those cultivators of Yunshan. I was heartless and I was not human. I grew up in that kind of environment and I felt that people were all like that. I was the only one who was different. I always felt that I was different, that there was something wrong with me. My teacher said that those were all inner demons. He told me to get rid of them sooner or later. Then I met Li Chunfeng. She murmured the name 3 times. Every time she repeated it, Lord Donghai frowned uneasily. Finally, I found someone like me. He had a nice way of talking. Say something nice. Let me know that I'm not an anomaly. There's someone just like me. He let me know that love and desire were not something to be ashamed of or bad. I betrayed Yunshan with him and I met a lot of demons. I also knew that the demons on the land had terrible temperaments. They were even more different. They looked like humans but they had no feelings at all. Tears rolled down from Shangguanyu's eyes again. I thought Li Chunfeng was the best person in the world. He also said that I was his treasure. But later I found that he was no different from those people of Yunshan and those demons. They were all not human. She raised her hand and pointed at Lord Donghai. Zhao Zijing, then I came to your place and met you. You're a demon. But when I met you and heard you say I'm a treasure, do you know? It reminded me of Li Chunfeng. I thought you looked like a human. You were more like a human than Li Chunfeng. I thought you were a demon, but you were a human. Now I know that demons are demons after all. You don't know anything. Zhao Zijing. You don't understand people's hearts at all. Why are you pretending to be so affectionate? You are a demon. She said this at the top of her voice, covering her face and crying, Why? I can't meet anyone. Lord Donghai felt like he was struck by lightning. He was stunned for a while and then he slowly reached out his hand as if he wanted to grab Shang Guanyu's shoulder. But as soon as he raised his hand he put it down, his eyes staring blankly. I don't understand. I don't understand. Chapter 670. After saying this he was silent for a long time. Then he said, Fine. If you kill him you will be my enemy. I won't kill him. I won't kill him, okay? Shang Guanyu shook her head, her eyes filled with sadness. Don't you understand? Don't you understand? As she said this, her right hand suddenly formed a sign, and a faint golden light flowed around her body. Seeing this, Dong Haijun frowned and shouted in a low voice, Withdraw. Shang Guanyu shouted, Zhao Zijing, don't you dare. Now that things had come to this point, why would Lord Donghai not dare to do anything? The water-repelling light shield suddenly expelled Dong Haijun, and instantly shrank into a fist-sized bead, trapping Shang Guanyu inside. Her voice suddenly became softer as if she had been thrown to the edge of the sky. But the golden light inside the shield shone brightly, as if a small sun was trapped inside. Crimson cracks appeared one after another on the surface of the cover that had shrunk into a ball, but they quickly flowed like water and calmed down. Dong Haijun held the ball in his palms. The wounds on his face and wrists had healed. The tent was originally dark and gloomy, but now the small ball in his palms shone brightly, making his face look gloomy and ferocious. Although he did not have many treasures in his hands, this water-repelling light shield was one of the special ones. The tent of the commander of an army was the most heavily guarded place. As for the light barrier in his tent, it was the strongest of the strongest. Shang Guanyu's cultivation was not low, but how could she break free in a short time when she was trapped in such a thing, with Dong Haijun's constant demon power pouring in from the outside? She shouted and scolded, but Dong Haijun was no longer submissive like before. Because of the fear of losing something, he was now determined and unshakable. This stalemate lasted for about half an hour, and the golden light in the small ball finally faded. Dong Haijun looked inside and could only see Shang Guanyu shrouded in a cloud of mist. He couldn't see her figure or face. He sighed and raised his hand to cast a restriction on the ball, turning it black and then slowly put it down. His body suddenly withered and he sat in the mud at the bottom of the sea. Just like that, after about a quarter of an hour, a personal guard suddenly came in from outside the tent to report. Juanshang, Lord Donghai said weakly, get lost. But after a while the bodyguard still hadn't left. He then said, yes. He raised his eyebrows, scram. However, the curtain was suddenly parted and a person walked in. Lord Donghai was agitated and stood up abruptly. But he realized that the person who came was Huang Guanzi. He was stunned. After a while he said, You, sir, why are you here? Didn't I tell you to stay on the island? What happened? Huang Guanzi frowned slightly and glanced at the tent. Inside the water-repelling essence light shield, there was originally a luxurious room. But now that the shield was in the hands of Lord Donghai, the tent was stuck in the mud of the seabed. The Dragon King of the East Sea fell to the ground. Now that he stood up he couldn't even shake off the dirt on his body. Huang Guanzi then shook his head, Don't worry, Juanshang. Nothing happened on the island. I was worried that something had happened here so I rushed over. His eyes fell on the small ball in his hand. I heard that a master from Penglai went straight to the Central Army. What happened? Lord Donghai was relieved. But soon a look of despair appeared on his face and he sat down again. Alas, nothing happened on the island. Alas, what's the use now? Alas, 1,000 years ago I didn't want to be this dragon king. Alas, the divine lord chose me. Alas, if I hadn't gone to the dragon island, I wouldn't have become this dragon king. If I hadn't become this dragon king, I wouldn't have met little you. If I hadn't met little you, I wouldn't have such a sad thing today. Huang Guanzi frowned and looked at him. Only after he had rambled on like this and told her everything that had just happened did he suddenly raise his eyebrows and shout, "Fool!" Lord Donghai was stunned. In the past year, when had he ever seen Huang Guanzi make such an expression and say such rude words? In his shock he even forgot to be angry. Huang Guanzi ignored him, took 4 steps in the tent, turned around and shouted at him again. His voice was stern. "I have been assisting Lord Donghai for a year, just to see you like this? Listen to what you are saying. Stop fighting? Stop fighting at sea? Return to seclusion? Hehe." He sneered and pointed at Lord Donghai. "That woman is too soft-hearted. Are you confused? If you stop fighting, can you live? Can she live? Let me ask you, are you really sincere to her?" Lord Donghai was dumbfounded by the storm of questions. After a while he said slowly, Of course I am sincere to her. I have told you a lot about me and her over the past year. Do you still doubt my sincerity?" "Lord Donghai, now I have to doubt it." Huang Guanzi looked at him. "If you are sincere to her, you should think about what is the best for her and how you can give her this kind of kindness. If you don't even bother to think about these things, only feel sad, wronged and give up everything, you are not really good to her, you just mistook your kindness for love. A man," Huang Guanzi clenched his teeth, "should make up for his mistakes. Instead of bemoaning and remorseful, he should be holding up the sky, not letting the sky collapse. A man," he paused and took a deep breath, "even if he is misunderstood, as long as he can know his mistakes, as long as he can face his own conscience. So what if he has to bear the infamy?" Lord Donghai looked at him and slowly stood up. "Sir, you," Huang Guanzi restrained his expression, "do you understand, Lord Donghai?" "I." The Dragon King of Donghai looked at the small ball in his palm and then at Huang Guanzi. "Sir, please teach me what to do." The counselor from the Freemasonry finally relaxed a little. "I dare not teach. I just give some suggestions to Lord Donghai." "Sir, please speak. We are here for Li Yunxin, for the entrance to the netherworld." Huang Guanzi softened his tone and said in a low voice, "There is no conflict between Lord Donghai and Lady Mingyue about the entrance to the netherworld. We even have common interests. Only in the matter of Li Yunxin. Lord Donghai has a demon body and was transformed into a dragon king by Lord Xinryu. He can't remember his parents and he doesn't have any children, let alone this kind of emotional inheritance. He can't understand the relationship between mother and son. Love can be fated. But, in fact, how many people in the world can understand it? Just think about Lady Mingyue, my lord. Many times a person can't completely understand another person, so you just need to respect her thoughts. She doesn't want Li Yunxin to die. We have come to this point, but we don't want him to die either, do we? On the contrary," Huang Guanzi shook his head, "we still need to lead people to save him. What about after that? Provoking the remaining 7 dragon kings to fight among themselves and asking Li Yunxin to kill them one by one, isn't that also helping him?" Li Yunxin said that he did all this to protect himself and to help the Dragon King succeed. Neither you nor I believe it. But the alliance between the strong is like this. Before the dagger is revealed, the alliance is unbreakable. Lord Donghai will be in power and glory after he has done all these things. With the capital to negotiate with Li Yunxin, isn't it up to you to kill him or not? Hearing this, Lord Donghai pondered for a while and finally his expression lightened. But soon he frowned. "But sir, you want Li Yunxin. Even if I don't kill him, it won't be you and I who conspired to kill him?" Huang Guanzi smiled. "The entrance to the netherworld is big. Wanting Li Yunxin is just taking advantage of the situation and taking revenge. I advise Jun Shang not to be swayed by emotions. Could it be that I would be the opposite? Rest assured, Lord, since Madame Mingyue's worry about Li Yunxin may affect my plan with you, then let's put the matter of revenge aside for the time being. We will get the entrance to the netherworld first, and then, after this matter, the Freemasonry and Donghai will discuss the matter of Li Yunxin. At that time, whether Lord Donghai will protect him for Madame Mingyue or continue to cooperate with us is also up to you." Lord Donghai opened his mouth, wanting to say something but stopped. Huang Guanzi waved his hand and smiled. I have told you just now. The alliance between the strong does not require that all the parties have the same goal. Lass, although I am congenial to you, but there is still a subtle difference in our positions. When the day really comes when we meet on the battlefield, if Juanshang wins on account of our friendship today, allow me to join you and continue to serve Juanshang. These words sounded sincere. Even Lord Donghai was moved and blurted out, then why don't you? Huang Guanzi's face was solemn. Although I am not a gentleman, I also know that there are things that should be done and things that should not be done. Lord Donghai took a deep breath and bowed deeply to him. Mister's integrity, wisdom and demeanor are all admirable. If there is such a day, I will help you conquer the border and guard the ocean forever. Huang Guanzi returned the bow. Then Lord Donghai, please continue to advance. Previously, Lord Haohan did not order the whole army to attack for the sake of his own reputation, but it backfired and made him lose face. Today they retreated 100 miles and reorganized for a day. I think they are reviving their morale and their offensive will be fierce. That Li Yunxin put himself in a dead end, which is a wise move. But if he does not receive help, he will become a joke. The situation is urgent. Lord Donghai, please set off immediately. Lord Donghai straightened his body. With a slight shake, his robe became bright again. Also, please continue to guard Peng Lai for me. Then he strode out of the tent and quickly began to shout and dispatch. Huang Guanzi stood in the tent for a while. Suddenly he raised his face and closed his eyes. Then he let out a long sigh and flicked his sleeves. Chapter 671. Lord Donghai has been in the Sea Tiger Gorge for a full day and a half. But the surface of the East Sea is not completely unguarded. As early as the army set off, he has sent orders to all places to strengthen their vigilance. The sea is vast and there are many aquatic creatures. Since the demons are aquatic creatures, it is easy to communicate with their own kind and they are easy to control. Therefore, in fact, many seemingly ordinary and mindless fish, shrimps, whales and dolphins in the East Sea have become spies. Under such a strict defense, it is difficult for anyone to get rid of surveillance. Of course, it is another matter whether they can be stopped or not. Red Lady is entrusted by Li Yunxin to stop the owner of Southwood House. Although she only needs to stop one person, it is not easy to do on the sea. She uses several treasures brought from Dongting and sets up defenses on the sea and seabed with her own supernatural power. These defenses are probably only for the strong. If one only looks at Wacken and ignores the difference in material form, the sea and the sky now look like a net. Although the Wacken flow in the net is violent and chaotic as a whole, it is still a whole piece. People with low realms can't cause any waves in this net, just like small fish and shrimp slip out of the net. But the strong above the true realm and the mysterious realm are like whales and dolphins. No matter what, they will touch this net and be noticed. Red Lady spins such a net along the eastern coast like a spider. Then she begins to wait on a reef protruding from the sea. She naturally knows that her whereabouts may also be known by the demons of the East Sea, but she doesn't care. She has the dragon soul. Even if it has not been completely integrated, it is enough for her to look down upon any existence in the world. During the waiting period she finds many interesting things. For example, a few demons were hiding somewhere nearby, a small demon was transforming somewhere, or a murder had occurred on a ship near the coast, and a few sailors had killed the ship's owner and thrown his body into the sea, then discussed to disguise it as a shipwreck. But there is still no sign of the strong. So she continues to wait. Therefore she does not notice some inconspicuous people a little farther away. About 400 paces from the rock on which she stood, and about 100 paces from the land, there was a skiff on the surface of the sea. Compared to those big ships that sailed far away, it was an extremely small ship. It was similar to the ferry boat used by the inland fishermen on a small river. The hull of the ship was a single entity. Although it was made of wood, it did not seem to have been pieced together. It was more like a piece of wood had been melted and molded into this shape. At the bow of the ship stood a woman with a shocking beauty. She wore a lake blue chiffon dress and her black hair was loosely tied. If the former Qing emperor was here, he would be pleasantly surprised. It was the Taoist Qing Shui who had lived in the capital for 1,000 years that he thought about day and night. Although this place was not far from land, the sea had already turned a deep blue. Originally there were still waves and wind, but now they seemed to be suppressed by some kind of power. The surface of the water within 100 meters was as smooth as a mirror, and even the air seemed to have solidified. She raised her head slightly and looked towards the east with a calm expression. In that direction were Red Lady, Lord of Donghai, Penglai Island, a vast army, and Li Yunxin on the stone pillar. In fact, she had been watching like this for 2 whole days. From the departure of the vast army, to Li Yunxin breaking the formation and killing the enemy, to the retreat of the vast army, it had been a whole day of reorganization. After a while, Daoist Xianxia raised her hand. The chiffon dress fell down, revealing a snow-white forearm. This arm was so slender that it seemed to break with a light snap. However, her fingers flicked lightly in the void like plucking a string, and a strange vibration appeared in the whole space. It did not seem to be any kind of known magical power. It was more like playing a zither. After about 3 or 4 flicks, she frowned slightly. It seemed that she was not satisfied with the result. She touched the void again, and a zither with only 5 strings appeared in front of her. At this time she stretched out her hand and plucked on the strings. A quiet and solemn sound came out and even made the whole sea tremble slightly. At the same time, golden ripples suddenly appeared in the air around Red Lady, who was standing 400 li away from them. It was as if the space had turned into metal and then melted. Then it was shaken by some strong force. With a buzz, her red robe flew up. The female monster in Dongting was shocked. She immediately turned to look to the west. In the next moment, the reef beneath her feet shattered into pieces, and she disappeared without a trace. The super monster at the peak of Xian realm felt the information sent from 400 meters away. It was hard to judge whether it was good or bad based on the information alone. But what shocked her was that she did not feel any fluctuation of Wacken before. The methods of cultivators and monsters were extremely magical and unpredictable in the eyes of mortals. For example, making a fire out of thin air 100 steps away by making a hand gesture. Mortals didn't know how to ignite it without firewood or oil. However, in the eyes of magical people, monster power and Wacken power were like a line. It came from the body, shot 100 steps away, and then burst into fire. However, the changes around her didn't follow this rule. It was more like the whole space suddenly changed. The surrounding Wacken power vibrated for no reason and there was no defense at all. The newcomer was showing her power. When Red Lady, who turned into a red light, rushed to the mirror-like sea, Daoist Xianxia put her fingers on the strings of the zither. Seeing the aggressiveness of the newcomer, she didn't change her expression. She took back her fingers. Another clear zing sound rang out, releasing a feather sound. Red Lady suddenly stopped in the air. She was only 10 feet away from Daoist Xianxia. 4 high-level cultivators and monsters. A distance of 10 feet was like face-to-face. However, the female monster didn't seem to be restricted. It was more like she was moved out of the space where Daoist Xianxia was. She could move freely and her monster power was not sealed. However, she couldn't move forward anymore. She could only make slight ripples on the sea, like shaking a steel plate. Red Lady quickly realized this point. She simply stopped in the air and stared at Daoist Xianxia like a beast hunting its prey. You? Are you the owner of Southwood House? Li Yunxin forbade you to go to him. Go. Daoist Xianxia looked at Red Lady carefully. If others looked at this female monster like this, she would have been angry. But now she knew she couldn't figure out the opponent's method, so she couldn't vent her anger. She just raised her eyebrows and stared at her. What are you looking at? Daoist Xianxia's face showed a trace of smile. What an overbearing little female monster. You're dead, but your obsession still exists for so long. Don't you know that this isn't a good thing? Red Lady looked at her angrily. What nonsense are you talking about? Daoist Xianxia looked down and used her slender middle finger to gently slide on the strings. Little girl, you're already dead. It's just that it's common for mortals to die without knowing they're dead, but it's rare for a monster to die. Now your body and mind are formed by the dragon soul. The reason why you can remember the past and your deep love for Li Yunxin is because of your obsession, causing you to sink into the sea of bitterness and unable to escape. She spoke very softly and slowly. Now that she sighed, it was like a cool breeze blowing on her face. Red Lady didn't know why the owner of Southernwood House didn't say anything about Li Yunxin the moment she saw her, but said a bunch of inexplicable things. She wanted to scold her loudly, but her anger slowly calmed down. She even felt that her body was soaked in a pool of warm water. It was so comfortable that she almost lost her strength. Taoist Xianxia looked at the strings and shook her head. Lord Dongting wants you to fuse with the dragon's soul. But he doesn't know that there's no way to fuse with the dragon's soul. Right now your obsession and the dragon's soul are stuck together like glue. It's not solid. Time is passing, there will be a crack in the end. If this goes on, there are only two situations. She gently stroked the strings. Either your obsession is destroyed, you forget everything in the past and become a walking corpse with only strength. Or, your obsession with Li Yunxin wins over the dragon soul and you're separated from the dragon soul again. You're still you, but you've lost all your strength. Speaking until here, she looked at Red Lady. Little girl, that's why the Dragon Island Master isn't in a hurry to take away your things. So, what kind of result do you want? Red Lady suddenly felt tired in her heart. She had never heard of what Taoist Xianxia said. Now that she heard it, she should be shocked, angry, or suspicious. But when those soft words entered her ears, it was as if she already knew it, but she just mentioned it now. Because of this subtle emotion, she felt powerless. The sea and sky in front of her seemed to have changed. It was originally a vast sea and a clear sky. It should make people feel open-minded and only want to sail to the end of the world. But now she felt that the sea was terrifyingly empty and the water was terrifyingly deep. The sun in the sky was even more dazzling, making people panic. The vast world made her feel incomparably small. She wanted to find a safe corner, but there was nowhere to hide. Her fluttering clothes and flying hair slowly calmed down. Her eyes became a little dazed and her anger almost completely disappeared. Red Lady frowned and looked at Taoist Xianxia. Why? However, there was something wrong with it. She felt that something was wrong. A stubborn but resolute thought in his heart was making a sound and shouting in his heart. Even though the shout was suppressed by Taoist Xianxia's words, it still didn't stop. It was this sound that made her feel, things shouldn't be like this. Something's not right. Taoist Xianxia smiled. She was about to speak again, but Red Lady's eyes fell on her zither. Zither. Most zither nowadays were 7-stringed, but this one was 5-stringed. But Red Lady had traveled the world before. She knew that zither were 5-stringed before 2,000 years ago, and 2 strings were added later. She was the princess of Dongting, and her father was also a person who loved elegance and prosperity. Therefore she learned how to play zither and knew the theory of zither. She knew that the 5-stringed zither, gong, shang, jiao and zhenyu, also corresponded to the 5 elements: earth, metal, wood, fire and water. Now Taoist Xianxia was playing the zhenyu. The zhenyin belonged to fire and could enter the heart. Chapter 672. Once she realized this, the tiredness in her heart suddenly dissipated. Daoist Xianxia was messing with her mind. Her body couldn't move forward, but she found the space around her was slightly vibrating. Daoist Xianxia's supernatural power was strange. It seemed to send her into another space. But once she noticed this detail, she knew that Daoist Xianxia couldn't completely forbid anything. Red Lady scolded, "What does it have to do with you? Shut up." With this shout, the demon power of the female monster at the peak of Xian realm surged and burst out. When she rushed over, Daoist Xianxia stopped her with the sound of feathers. But the force still made the surrounding sea slightly tremble. At this moment he suddenly exerted his full strength. Although he still couldn't break through the restrictive spell laid down by the other party, it caused the sea surface to shake like boiling water. It also caused ripples to appear in the air that was originally almost frozen. A light sound was heard. The strings on Daoist Xianxia's zither were broken. She didn't know what the strings were made of. Once they were broken, they became 2 extremely thin but extremely hard steel wires like 2 extremely long needles. One of them actually cut Daoist Xianxia's middle finger. A drop of blood appeared on the tip of her finger. Daoist Xianxia looked down and flicked it away. What a determined little girl. She sighed softly. If you were born as a human, you would be a genius in cultivation. Unfortunately, you were born as a demon. She suddenly looked up at Red Lady and quickly plucked the horn string with her index finger. Do you know that Li Yunxin is just like his name? His heart is not only unpredictable but also belongs to someone else. The sound of horns belonged to the wood element and entered the liver. Red Lady wanted to shout again, but when she heard this sound she suddenly felt as if a monstrous wave was set off on the surface of the sea, pressing straight towards her. Even though she knew it was not real, she couldn't help but look at the non-existent wave. She took a closer look and knew it was not a wave. It was clearly an indescribable sorrow and despair that could not be expressed in words. Her aura collapsed once again and she subconsciously tried to hide. But there was no wave for her to hide, and where could she hide to? The huge wave hit her. Red Lady cried out in pain and fell from the sky. Your obsession makes you live but also makes you suffer. Daoist Xianxia used her finger to play the string. The sound of the horn was deep and mellow, lingering for a long time. It was as if waves were surging up one after another, continuously bombarding Red Lady's body. Li Yunxin thought that me coming to the East Sea would be disadvantageous to him, so he asked you to stop me. But doesn't he know that stopping me is even more dangerous than facing the vast army? You have him in your heart, but he might not have you in his heart. Can you prove his sincerity with your sincerity? Even if his sincerity can be proven, if one day he cuts it off, can you cut off your obsession? Daoist Clearwater's robe started to flutter. Her words became rapid, but her fingers left the strings. He calmly looked at Red Lady, who was in a daze on the hard surface of the sea for a good while before he softly said, Li Xinyu, I can ferry you. But you have to cross yourself first. Leave the East Sea temporarily and let me save him this time. Red Lady frowned, her eyes were full of sorrow. Her voice lost its previous imposing manner, and became like a woman who was heartbroken but still tried to hold on to a glimmer of hope. But I can also save him. Why must it be you? Daoist Clearwater shook her head slightly. Your strength is not enough. Your strength is not suitable for him. She paused and looked towards the east. The vast army is about to make a move. If you stop me here, his life will be in more danger. Think about it. Do you listen to him or do you bend for him? Red Madam stared blankly. His life, his life, his life. When she heard these words, just like before, a voice suddenly rang out in her heart. She was even more stunned and frowned. He told me. Red Lady leaned on the hard surface of the sea and shook her head slightly. He told me about this matter. Daoist Clearwater frowned slightly for the first time. This demoness was stubborn and strong-willed. She had used 4 out of 5 notes and she had already broken it once. But looking at the current situation, she had not completely subdued her, and instead there was a counterattack. But there was no reason for this. Whether it was Lord Dongting's method, Red Lady's fortuitous encounter, or Li Yunxin's entrustment, none of them were enough for her to have unexpected abilities. Then the question was it because of the word heart? The word heart was indeed the most difficult to predict. Daoist Clearwater seemed to be able to subdue Red Lady effortlessly. The battle between high-level cultivators and great demons was always earth-shattering. Only when there was a huge disparity in strength or when it was just a friendly contest would there be such a situation. But in fact, according to Daoist Clearwater, although Red Lady belonged to the category of not completely fused with the dragon soul, the power of the Xian realm that she displayed was not to be underestimated. Now that she used such a method, it was not as easy as it looked. But it was still not enough to completely subdue her. Red Lady said in a low voice. But he told me that this matter concerns his life. Daoist Clearwater heaved a sigh of relief. If you continue to block me here, his life will indeed be in danger. But Red Lady seemed to be gripped by some kind of paranoid emotion. She restrained the terrifying demonic power in her body and unconsciously repeated Daoist Clearwater's last sentence. His life will be in danger. His life will be in danger. As she said this, she slowly raised her head and looked towards the east blankly. But he said, if you go over, his life will be in danger. Daoist Clearwater raised her hand and placed it on the 5th string. He is involved in the situation, so he can't see the whole picture. What he said may not be true. But Red Lady turned to look at her. You are even afraid of me? What are you going to use? Her eyes were originally dim because of the great sorrow. However, when Daoist Xianxia mentioned Li Yunxin's life, the melancholy in her eyes seemed to be pulled and bitten by a stubborn force. Following her words, the melancholy in her eyes quickly faded away. Red Lady raised her head. The light in her eyes gradually became clear. What are you going to use to save him? Her voice was like tearing silk, almost tearing the sea and the sky apart. No one knew where the female monster got her amazing strength from. She suddenly stretched her hands forward. The originally calm and solid sea seemed to have suddenly melted. The rolling waves were lifted up by her strength and directly rushed towards Daoist Clearwater's small boat. The vanguard of this huge force was an even more powerful sound wave. Previously, Red Lady used the sound wave to break one of Daoist Clearwater's zither strings. Now this sound wave was even fiercer and more than 10 times more powerful than before. Bang! A loud explosion was heard. The guqin in front of Daoist Xianxia was shattered into pieces and even scratched her face. Now Red Lady was like a ferocious beast that was restrained on an iron plate. This ferocious beast was previously weak, but now she was energetic again. Although it was still bound, it had already caused the entire iron plate to start to shake. The calm sea had once again become turbulent. Daoist Clearwater's zither was destroyed, so she couldn't even play the fifth note. The small boat under her feet was still intact, but it was also shaking in the waves as if it was about to capsize. When the zither exploded, it created a terrifying air wave that enveloped Daoist Xianxia. When the rolling air wave arrived, it dispersed the air wave. Now she didn't look as calm as before. There were bloodstains on her face and arms, and even her lake blue gauze dress was torn. Red Lady was startled by this scene. How could a person who could suppress a great monster at the peak of Xian realm have such a fragile body? But after this shock she was even more shocked. When the waves that were stirred up by her blasted Daoist Clearwater and the small boat under her feet, her whole appearance changed. Daoist Clearwater's body suddenly shone with golden light. And on her face, arms and the wounds caused by the broken pieces, also shone with golden light. It was as if the blood flowing in her body wasn't blood, but was really filled with golden light. Red Lady was no stranger to such a scene. Li Yunxin, the current her, once she was injured she would always be like this. What is this Daoist Clearwater? Is it, also, Longzi's? Chapter 673. While Red Lady was shocked, Daoist Xianxia pressed her hand down and suppressed the surface of the ocean again. At this time her temperament was completely different. Daoist Xianxia was extremely beautiful. She wore light clothes and her hair was like a waterfall. It was as if she was taking a leisurely walk in her own room in Qingdu or Jinghua instead of the battlefield. But now, although her appearance didn't change much, her details had changed subtly. Her hair was spread out. Although it was still smooth and not messy, it also caused her originally calm temperament to decrease by a third. The pupils in her eyes became a little thin. Although they didn't shrink into a line when Dragon Sun was angry, they became oval. Like a cat in a bad mood. Therefore these pupils also added a bit of demonic temperament to her temperament. The thin clothes were shattered by the waves raised by Red Lady. However, a layer of faintly discernible armor appeared beneath it. But if you looked carefully, it didn't seem to be armor but scales growing on her body. Although Red Lady, who was at the peak of Xian realm, couldn't seriously injure Daoist Xianxia, she had to use some means and show her face to deal with it. Red Lady frowned and looked at her in surprise. Aren't you the owner of Southernwood House? If you want me to be, then I am. Daoist Xianxia pressed her hands down again, and the surface of the ocean became a piece of iron plate again. But this time Red Lady was excluded. The area within 100 miles became a wizardry barrier, and Daoist Xianxia was shrouded in it. Red Lady was no longer restrained, but she couldn't come in. This seemed to mean that Daoist Xianxia admitted the strength of the female monster and believed that she might be a substantial threat to her. Such a discovery made Red Lady feel proud. She raised her eyebrows. It turns out that you were just pretending before. Today I'm here, so don't think you can escape. But Daoist Xianxia only showed a fleeting and slightly mocking smile on her face. Little girl. I just can't control you, not that I can't kill you. Previously I called you here just to avoid the fight and trouble in the east. I wanted to make things clear to you here. Alas, it seems now that you are strong-willed. That is both a good and a bad thing. How to deal with you is a headache. Her words sounded like she was trying to be brave, but it was not entirely a bluff. Hong Yangzi had set up an inescapable net here, but this Taoist Xianxia stopped at the shore of the East Sea. If he took another step forward, he would step into her net and be noticed by her. However, releasing a message to ask her to come over was indeed what she meant in her words. However, the demoness sneered, I'll show you my power first. Previously she was trapped by Taoist Xingshui's zither music. He had the strength but could not use it. It could be said that she was extremely aggrieved. Now that he was free, his temper flared up. When a peak profound realm demon made a move, the weather would change and heaven and earth would topple. But what Taoist Xingshui said was true. Red Lady attacked with all her strength for a quarter of an hour, but this time, not even a ripple appeared on the sea under Taoist Xingshui's feet. It seemed to be because previously, Daoist Xingshui had used some kind of method to separate Red Lady from this world and wrap her up. But now that he couldn't control her, he simply wrapped himself up. This method was naturally easy to use on herself, and the power was more than 100 times stronger. She calmly watched Red Madam tossing and turning for a while before saying in a low voice, "Li Chunfeng, should I kill your son's helper?" Red Lady saw that her attack was not effective, so she gave up. But hearing Taoist Xingshui's words, she immediately frowned. "What? Who are you talking to?" But Taoist Xingshui ignored her at the moment. Red Lady was about to scold again, but she saw a person rushing from the east and shouting in a low voice, "Master, please don't kill her." He took a closer look. It was a middle-aged scholar with a very wretched appearance. Who else could it be but Huang Guanzi in the tent of King of East Sea? But Red Lady didn't know his identity. She only thought that he was an assistant called by Taoist Xingshui, so she used her demon power to blow him down. Unexpectedly, this person was also very powerful. Although it was just a casual blow from a female monster who was at the peak of Xian realm, the power was not to be underestimated. But he actually withstood it. After withstanding the blow, he flashed into Taoist Xingshui's inhibition spell. Red Lady was taken aback for a moment before she cursed, "Hiding the head and showing the tail, hiding the head and showing the tail. Come out." Unfortunately, these two people also ignored her. Huang Guanzi flew to Taoist Xingshui's side, looked at her deeply and then frowned. "Master, she actually hurt you." After saying this, he kneeled on the surface of the ocean and bowed deeply. "I can't redeem myself even if I die 10,000 times. Taoist Xingshui waved her hand. "Li Chunfeng, this has nothing to do with you. She is your son's friend, not yours." She frowned slightly. "You look too ugly like this. Change back." Huang Guanzi was stunned and said subconsciously, "This skin is not made." But he quickly changed his words and smiled. "Yes. I'm disturbing your sight and hearing." After saying this, he stretched out his hand to scratch his own face. Cultivators and demons all had ways to disguise themselves. The demon was originally not a human, so when it transformed into a human, it was actually similar to a person being born from the mother's womb. Whatever the intention was, the appearance would also be the same. For example, when the mud water was not completely dry, it could still be repaired and slightly adjusted. But once the incarnation was completed, the appearance would be fixed. Therefore, if one wanted to transform into another appearance, he would have to use some camouflage. But this method also had a high and low level. The most common trick was used by some traveling Taoist priests and low-level demons. It was to bewitch a person's mind. The appearance of the Taoist priests and demons was still the original appearance, but in the eyes of the bewitched person it was not the case. When Li Yunxin saw Xianxia and the other demons for the first time in the Qiao family's mansion, they used this kind of trick. The more sophisticated trick was to use illusion on oneself. There were a lot of such tricks and there were more than 100 of them. But since it was an illusion, it naturally couldn't be real. It had to be maintained by demon power and spiritual power. Therefore it was easy for the aura to leak and it was easy for others to see through it. Even the most sophisticated of these tricks couldn't escape this limitation. Therefore, if one wanted to hide from the eyes of a great demon like Lord Donghai, they had to use more powerful tricks. The art of painting was one of them, using the condensation of spiritual power and the realm of turning illusions into reality to paint a skin bag. If the trick was exquisite, it could ensure that the spiritual power of the skin bag was restrained and not leaked out. If it was worn on the body, even immortals wouldn't be able to see through it. Because since it was turning illusions into reality to a certain extent, the skin bag was no different from the real thing. The yellow Guanzi skin bag that Li Chunfeng was using now was one of his proudest works. Usually it could be taken off without any damage, but it still needed to go through various methods. But now that Daoist Xingshui said it looked ugly, he directly tore off the face. Once the face was torn off, It was like the zipper in Li Yunxin's world with 2 slits from head to toe. The yellow guanzi quickly expanded, and with a soft sound, it turned into spiritual power and disappeared between heaven and earth. Li Chuanfeng's face was revealed. Daoist Qingshui looked at it and smiled. That's more like it. But the smile only appeared on his face for a moment, and he quickly shifted his gaze to Red Lady. Li Chunfeng, now tell me, what should we do with this little demon? If her cultivation level was lower, I could have avoided her or subdued her. But now her cultivation level is very high, and her temper is also very strong. Daoist Qingshui turned to look at Red Lady. I heard that she listened to Li Yunxin and wanted to stop me on the sea. Li Chunfeng slowly stood up and tilted his head, as if he didn't dare to look at Daoist Qingshui directly. Hearing her question, he quickly cupped his hands. Master, please calm down. But why did you come to Donghai? Did I do anything wrong? I came for Xiaxing, Daoist Qingshui interrupted him. Xiaxing is in Li Yunxin's hands. Don't you know? Li Chunfeng sighed and bowed again. It's my fault after all. More than 10 years ago I couldn't find Xiaxing. It was my first mistake. A few days ago Li Yunxin just saw him, but he escaped again. That was the second time. Then I went back to Penglai and planned to wait for him to walk into the trap, but I was stopped by Li Yunxin again. That was the third time. Master's troubles were all caused by me. I can't atone for it even if I die 10,000 times. Daoist Qingshui softly said, and looked up at Red Lady who was far away. Since this demon couldn't break the inhibition and her words were ignored, she simply stopped making trouble. After all, Li Yunxin asked her to stop Xiaxing. At this time she had stopped him. Don't blame yourself now. Just tell me what you plan to do. For so many years, Daoist Qingshui said in a low voice, almost all the things in my society are planned by you. After 1,000 years of experience, I can't look down on you anymore. I think you must have a plan for the things on Donghai. Li Yunxin, what are you going to do with him? Li Chunfeng was stunned. Master, didn't you say at the foot of Mount Yunshan that he was still useful? Maybe he could. That was before. Daoist Qingshui blinked. At that time, Xiaxing wasn't in his hands. He may be a variable and a good one. If we get Xiaxing, we will have the capital to hold those elders hostage. In this case, Li Yunxin can be a way out. But now Xiaxing is in his hands. If he managed to find out anything else, Xiaxing would be useless. At that time, Li Chunfeng opened his mouth. Yes. When Daoist Qingshui and Red Lady were fighting, he didn't talk much. But now he talked a lot when he saw Li Chunfeng, and even his expression became more vivid. What is it? Daoist Qingshui laughed. Tell me. I believe that Li Yunxin is a smart man. Once he asks something, he will know that he will die if he continues to ask. But if he is really stupid, Li Chunfeng sighed, I will kill him myself. Chapter 674. So do you think he got the answer? Li Chunfeng glanced at Red Lady in the distance. I think. Not yet. He probably used it as a bait to see you. Daoist Qingshui was silent for a while. You're really brave. Li Chunfeng worshipped again in fear. Master, please don't be angry. It was an expedient measure. At that time I saw that Li Yunxin had the state of mind of a Taishang and was a terrifying cultivation genius. If we let him go, he would be out of our control very soon. That was the only way. He paused and said carefully, in this world besides the master's previous life, who else could call him? Daoist Qingshui frowned slightly. Li Chunfeng immediately stopped talking. Undoubtedly the owner of Southwood House didn't like Li Chunfeng to mention this. As for whether she didn't like to talk about her previous life, or her previous life's role in that incident, no one knew. I believe what you said. Daoist Qingshui was silent for a while and said softly, I didn't come here to see Li Yunxin. I'm just worried about what you've been doing these days. Li Chunfeng, Shangguanyu is also in East Sea and Penglai. Li Chuanfeng's expression didn't change. I won't affect the overall situation because of her. Li Yunxin and Shangguanyu are both love tribulations that I'll cut off sooner or later. That's what I'm worried about. Daoist Qingshui let out a sigh. When they were talking, Li Chunfeng was very respectful while Daoist Qingshui looked very calm. But even so, he could feel the pressure between the two of them based on the relationship between superiors and subordinates. But when Daoist Xianxia let out a sigh, the pressure disappeared. It was as if they were two friends chatting. "We've known each other for 1,000 years, Daoist Xianxia said. As she spoke, she reached out and slowly rubbed her body. After rubbing a few times, a large piece of scale armor around her shrank back. This action made her look more human, and she indeed looked like an old friend. "I know your family is a cultivation genius. You too. Like father, like mother, like son." Li Chunfeng remained silent, his expression unchanged. "You cultivated the Dao to the true realm before changing to the painting Dao. When he was cultivating the painting Dao, he had broken through and regained his youth, which was why he had the appearance of a young man. Many years passed just like that." Priest Xianxia looked at Li Chunfeng carefully. "Before you met Shangguanyu, you cherished your body. But after you met Shangguanyu, you lived with her for more than 10 years, which meant that you aged yourself by more than 10 years. At that time I thought that you didn't want Li Yunxin to see through you. But even now you're still like this," Li Chunfeng whispered. "If his lord doesn't like it, I'll draw myself back." Clearwater Daoist smiled. "It's not a matter of whether I like it or not, or whether you can draw it back. Cultivators say that they have long lives, but aging is not something that they can control. Those who hadn't entered the realm and couldn't maintain their youth forever would also grow old. Breaking through realm after realm, there would always be a chance to regain their youth. But the extent of youth depends on each person's aptitude and fate. You used to chat with me and you said that there's no retreat in the path of cultivation. It's appropriate to use it in this case. Breaking through again and regaining their youth, people can choose whether or not they want this youth. But if they don't want this youth and ask themselves to grow old, it's an irreversible process. They have to wait for the next realm before they have a chance to choose. When you and Shangguanyu raised Li Yunxin, Shangguanyu chose to call her appearance the same for 10 years. But you said that you're old. You're already in the mysterious realm. You should know that once you grow old, you'll never have the chance to regain your youth." Priest Xianxia was silent for a while. "Are you doing this for Shangguanyu, Li Yunxin, or your tribulation of love? No matter which one it is, I don't believe that you'll cut it off." Priest Xianxia whispered. "She mysterious realm, you've stayed for 1,000 years. You've never cut off your love. Can you do it this time?" Li Chunfeng was finally moved. He moved his feet and said, You're very similar to that female monster." Priest Xianxia looked at him and said, "You didn't realize that your problem is not only the tribulation of love. The tribulation of love has now become a part of your other tribulation. You don't cut it off because you need this tribulation of love. You need to feel that you still have feelings, that you can be touched, and that you're like an ordinary person. But are you touched by Shangguanyu or Li Yunxin? You don't know it yourself, do you? You're holding on to this obsession, this tribulation of love, for fear that you'll lose it. Li Chunfeng, don't you realize that you've entered the void tribulation?" Li Chunfeng slightly opened his eyes and said, Master, you're overthinking." Priest Xianxia raised a hand and sealed Li Chunfeng's lips with a finger, saying softly, "You're in the mountain. I know what you're going to do to Shangguanyu. She's with Lord Donghai. Ordinary people who know the inside story will think that you're a married couple, playing the Dragon King of Donghai in the palm of your hand. But those who know something about you will think that Shangguanyu is also your chess piece, but this time she doesn't know it. But I understand you." Priest Xianxia moved closer and looked into Li Chunfeng's eyes, saying slowly, "You really fell in love with her and you really eloped with her. But the regret in your heart made you unable to face her anymore, so you left. Until now, you want to choose a husband for her, who can love her and take care of her. Unfortunately, in this aspect your vision is as bad as hers. In fact, it's already bad that you chose her. A girl like her, born in the Xianmen, has extraordinary talent and is doted on by millions. Such a girl is like a proud daughter of an official's family in the secular world. She told a thief who jumped into her boudoir that she was depressed and had no one to rely on, but the thief took it seriously and so did the girl. But she didn't know that a girl like her, even after hundreds or thousands of years, would still be a girl. She only thinks about love and she can be called kind. But she doesn't have the responsibility to show off her kindness. She doesn't want to be responsible for anything, and never knows what she should be responsible for. Luckily, she's a cultivator and can save her life. If she's a lady in the secular world, she probably only knows how to cry." Priest Xianxia smiled. "This isn't her fault, it's her family background's fault. She's even better than many ladies of her family background. But Li Chunfeng, you think you're doing it for her own good, to atone for her sins, to choose someone for her that you think is worth entrusting. But have you asked her? Are doing it for your own good. Until now, haven't you realized it? When you're in the tribulation of love, your love can't be real. It's not that you want to love, it's that tribulation that wants you to love. You think your own feelings and thoughts are actually the thoughts of the tribulation of love. And the thoughts that you want to cling to this tribulation of love is not yours. It's the thoughts of your vacuum tribulation. Do you understand now? Li Chunfeng gritted his teeth and took a step back, widening the distance between him and priest Xianxia. Then he frowned. My lord. My lord, what are you trying to do by saying all this at this time and place? I told you not to spoil things because of your own good intentions. Priest Xianxia rubbed the space between her eyebrows. At this moment, the strange phenomenon on her body had disappeared, and the thin gauze dress had returned. If you could have taken action against Li Yunxin earlier and gotten Xiexing, why would I come to the East Sea to help you? Xiexing is in Li Yunxin's hands now. It's troublesome for you and me to get something out of his hands. So now that there's someone to do it for you, I hope you can control yourself. Li Chunfeng said in a low voice, My lord, are you referring to the remaining Dragon King of the 8 Seas? Priest Xianxia didn't say anything and only looked at him. She seemed to be dissatisfied with his reaction. Li Chunfeng said again, My lord, are you saying, to get the Dragon King of the 8 Seas to attack Li Yunxin, and let him die in their hands? Priest Xianxia still didn't say anything. That's my original plan. But because my lord said that Li Yunxin is still useful, I decided to wait for him to get rid of the Dragon King before taking him down. Li Chunfeng frowned and said, My lord just said that if Li Yunxin didn't get what Xiexing knows, it was just now. Priest Xianxia finally spoke. Usually you wouldn't ask so many questions. You would say, well, this is called mutual destruction. Li Yunxin is useful. But after he used Xiexing to threaten us, he became a huge threat. We're exposed to him. He doesn't belong to Munenju nor the Freemasonry, but he knows too much. I've given him many chances in the past, but he's disappointed me. Now he's restless and wants to take the initiative. But I can tolerate all of that. But your reaction just now and your excuse for him made me realize how dangerous he really is. Li Chunfeng, Priest Xianxia said seriously, for the sake of our friendship of 1,000 years, I don't want you to kill him yourself. But from now on, Munenju won't give him any help. You don't interfere anymore and just stay by Donghai King's side. As for the rest, if he dies, you can collect his body. You can also cut off your relationship. If he doesn't die, I'll deal with it. But he... Li Chunfeng hesitated for a while. It's hard for him too, and that female demon. Priest Xianxia looked at Red Lady. The latter seemed to be trying to hear what they were talking about. But Priest Xianxia's restriction was unusual, so she couldn't get what she wanted. We've come this far. We've disintegrated the Freemasonry, Shenmen and demons, and we're close to the netherworld. She retracted her gaze, and the elders on Mount Yunshan have almost given up their power in the secular world. This means they might have to do that. If we're late, everyone will die. Chapter 675. Daoist Xianxia sighed. I know you've seen a lot of hypocrisy wrapped in the so-called justice and truth. But what we're doing now is indeed a great thing. No matter how dark the process is. She looked at him. After a while she said, Li Chunfeng, can I still trust you like before? The man heaved a deep sigh. I've never changed. Then I won't go. I'll wait for you in Baishui town. Daoist Xianxia said, I've mobilized the forces of the eastern countries. Once the Donghai incident is over and you're held back, I'll support you. She sighed again. The land isn't peaceful either. Hearing this, Li Chunfeng was slightly moved. It's that, Lu Gongzan. Daoist Xianxia said, but he just happened to be there. You've been in the Donghai these days, so you don't know what's happening on the land. It's a mess. It seemed that because of Li Chunfeng's promise to her, her expression softened again. So when they talked, it was like a casual conversation between friends. You should know these things. I'll send the news to you later, but I'll tell you first. You'll be prepared at sea. Daoist Xianxia thought for a while. After you know Yunshan, some people from the Shenmen are still alive. Some of them live in seclusion. Others go to the secular world and say they want to start a new sect. But the Freemasonry also occupy many caves and blessed lands. Both of them say they're the orthodox. When they fight, they can't care about anything else. Then Emperor Li says he wants to build a ghost kingdom. The one in the Qing kingdom also becomes a ghost emperor and wants to build a ghost kingdom. The two are fighting again, and now it's affecting several countries in the west. Li Chunfeng frowned. The cultivation of the one in the Qing kingdom isn't high, but Emperor Li is at the peak of the Xian realm. How? Because Emperor Li is also hurt. Daoist Qingshui looked to the east. Your son did a good thing. Guqin heard him. Now Emperor Li is fighting with the one in the Qing kingdom and Guqin. The one in the Qing kingdom. Li Chunfeng thought for a while. Is he the one we should help? Daoist Qingshui shook her head. I once told him to live well. But he had become a ghost. A good for nothing. Then the fate of the Qing kingdom had come to an end. The era of great competition was coming. He wanted to call him the overlord of the Midland. But since they wanted to fight with Emperor Li, then let them fight. We can look in the direction of the state of Yu. I heard that Ying Juren is a promising talent. Since Li Yunxin has spent so much effort on him and he has our people by his side, then his efforts will not be in vain. It's just that we hoped for the world to be in chaos, but we didn't expect it to be this chaotic. Daoist Qingshui looked at Li Chunfeng. When a few ghost emperors fight, the repercussions are everywhere. Some of the demons were emboldened, and they gradually began to occupy the city and claim themselves as kings, eating from the city. However, this scene is also within our expectations. He had originally thought that since the remaining members of the Celestial Sect of Wonders and the Freemasons that had been left behind, they would definitely not sit idly by and do nothing. In the end, guess what? That Lu Gongzan went to find trouble with the Celestial Sect of Wonders. He said that he wanted to avenge Shirquizi. Only these people were left in the Celestial Sect of Wonders, and now they can be considered to be on the same side. He poked a hornet's nest. First he was defeated and injured. After recuperating, he learned from Li Yunxin's style and went to guerrilla warfare. What he got was hatred's body. How could the Celestial Sect of Wonders stop him? There were heavy casualties and they had no time to care about those demons. That's why this mess happened. Daoist Qingshui paused here. Lu Gongzan has become a bad variable. I originally wanted to get rid of him. But then I thought that maybe I can keep him to hold back Li Yunxin. These days I have already sent people to capture him. Now he is trapped in the north. In about 10 more days, whether he is captured or killed, there should be a result. At that time you can use him here. Li Chunfeng thought for a while and only said, Master, you are far-sighted. Daoist Qingshui nodded. Get the Dragon Island, get the entrance to the Netherworld. If there is a new world in the Netherworld, it will be mine and yours. Go. After she said this, the small boat under her feet suddenly retreated. She only retreated about 10 feet. But in an instant she was 100 miles away. After a breath's time she could no longer be seen. Since Daoist Qingshui left, the restriction on the sea disappeared. Red Madam immediately frowned. She thought that there would be a fierce battle between the two of them. She didn't expect that Daoist Qingshui came and left suddenly. Only a Xian realm man was left. She was about to speak, but Li Chunfeng turned to her. I persuaded her to leave. Help me pass a message to Li Yunxin. Who are you? Shangguanyu is in Penglai Island. She is now kept in the water-repelling essence light shield by the Dragon King of the Eastern Sea. Li Chunfeng interrupted her. She still doesn't know what I have done. If he wants to ask me, find me and save Shangguanyu, he must calm the sea. Now that Penglai is surrounded by a large number of soldiers, he can't break in. Now the vast army is going to send troops again. You go and tell him that the mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. After saying this, Li Chunfeng rode the wind and was about to go northeast. But Red Madam waved her hand, and suddenly a wall of water rose from the sea. I can't stop her, but can't I stop you? Stop pretending to be a ghost. Because of the previous setbacks, the female monster wanted to use all her strength. Li Chunfeng was really stopped by her. But he didn't panic, just looked at her. Li Yunxin asked you to stop the owner of Southernwood House, but did he ask you to stop me? Instead of entangling with me here, it's better to help him. In a couple of hours, the Eastern Sea Army will be here. At that time, even if I pretend to stop you, it will be a waste of time. Red Madam sneered. You are obviously on her side. Li Chunfeng was stunned as if he just realized something. Then he smiled and pointed to himself. So little girl, you don't know who I am? Red Madam glared at him. I don't care who you are. I am his father, Li Chunfeng. Li Chunfeng said, I heard that your Dongting always likes secular prosperity, and your father likes to make friends in the human world. Since you want to be my daughter-in-law, why don't you bow to me? Bullshit. Red Madam said angrily. His parents died a long time ago. Although she said so, she still frowned and stared at Li Chunfeng. A look of doubt soon appeared on her face. If Li Yunxing was 20 or 30 years older, it seemed that he should be like this. Seeing that she was in a daze, Li Chunfeng flew up again and said, Go. Red Madam raised her hand but she didn't stop him. Hundreds of miles away from the stone pillar where Li Yunxing lived, as Li Chunfeng said, the vast army was mobilizing troops. They spent a whole day watching Li Yunxing's movements and finally realized that it was difficult to find any clues. There were only two things Li Yunxing did. One was to repair the magic circle, and the other was to draw soldiers one after another. These monsters in the sea had never seen such a method before. The so-called magic of turning beings into soldiers in Xianmen could not only be used by cultivators, but also by some monsters. But they all knew that it was an expedient measure in an emergency. After all, those things were transformed by Wacken and monster power. Some of the Wacken and monster power came from heaven and earth, and the other part came from the caster. Once it was damaged, the caster would also suffer. It was not something that could be transformed and thrown out. Therefore, it was often used to do some troublesome things that were inconvenient for the caster to do. It was a means of using the strong to fight the weak. If two strong people used this method in a fight, if the opponent broke these things one by one, it was equal to hurting the original person, which was exactly what the enemy wanted. But the method Li Yunxing was using now looked completely different. He was in the profound realm, and now he was using the skill of turning illusions into reality, to draw them one by one. They were all strange-looking guys. For example, there was a green-armored swordsman holding a two-handed greatsword. He wore a helmet on his head, but there were so many eyes on it that it was scary to look at. He sat cross-legged next to Li Yunxing as if he was protecting him. There was another swordsman with his hair tied up, holding a long and thin sword. The sword was sheathed at his waist, and he was leaning against a deep blue ox demon, who was playing an unknown musical instrument. The sound was curling up, like the mournful music of ancient times. There seemed to be a stone demon next to the ox demon. There was a faint flame coming out of the cracks on its body. It was as if lava had become a spirit. There was also a snake demon with a head full of snake hair, a nine-tailed fox demon and other strange-dressed guys. They were standing on the reef where Li Yunxing was, and there were more than 40 of them. At first he thought that they were help from somewhere, but he soon found something unusual. For example, when he summoned something, if he didn't like it, he would draw something on the paper in his hand. That thing would disappear into thin air. Seeing this, he realized that he had summoned it with his own ability. But even Qin Fengzi could feel that those things were real. They weren't created by pure demonic power or spiritual power. And they did exist in this world. Although there were strong and weak powers, they did exist. These demons seemed to be the commanders who led the army. Under the stone pillar, on the surface of the sea that Li Yunxing had solidified with his ability, there were thousands of soldiers. These soldiers were all dressed in different attires, and their weapons were of all sorts. Some had their hair in a bun, some wore heavy armor, and some held sabers as tall as a person. Lord Haohan used his ability to eavesdrop, and he could even hear the soldiers talking among themselves, saying things like, Great Qin Star-destroying crossbow, Great Song electromagnetic cannon, Great Tang battleship cutting saber, etc. The names were shocking, and they indeed shocked him. What was Li Yunxing trying to do? He hurriedly asked Qin Fengzi. But Qin Fengzi also frowned. These soldiers, although their words were evil, just by looking at their armor they were just ordinary soldiers. Could they withstand the attack of the vast army of demon soldiers? Chapter 676. But how could he not panic as he watched him create soldiers one by one? But even if he panicked, he had to wait for a day. Someone had already killed his way to the center of the army. He said that because he cherished talent, the whole army had retreated and asked him to rest. If he went back on his word, the demon kings on the ocean would become restless, and it would be a great disaster for him in the future. Finally, a whole day had passed. He heard the report from the 15 scouts heading to the northeast. Lord Donghai's army had already set off, and it was said that 2 powerful beings were fighting to the west, closer to the land. One of the 2 powerful beings must be the female demon, Red Lady. He knew that the opportunity had finally come. He should take this opportunity to charge with the whole army and end the battle as soon as possible. He couldn't give Li Yunxin any time to prepare. So Lord Haohan, who had been sitting on the throne for a whole day, slowly stood up. His face was gloomy and there was a bit of pity on it. He took 3 steps forward and said in a deep voice, "All troops move forward." The soldiers under his command didn't feel sorry for him. In their eyes, Li Yunxin had killed countless comrades, and now he had recruited many soldiers. In their hearts they only thought, how good it would have been if I had killed him earlier. This time, Lord Haohan planned to charge with the whole army and finish the battle in one fell swoop. He had already lost face once, and if he made another mistake his reputation wouldn't be good for hundreds of years. But as the saying goes, good things are strewn with setbacks. When the army reached the front of Li Yunxin's army and was about to carefully spread out the formation, scouts came to report that 3 more troops were coming from the direction of Penglai. They were North Sea Dragon King, Chu Liao Dragon King and Chichuan Dragon King. Lord Haohan was stunned and ordered the troops to stop and wait for orders. But the demon generals under him had already started cursing. The purpose of the 3 troops was clear. At first no one was willing to take the lead because they didn't know the actual strength of Li Yunxin. Now Lord Haohan's army had found out some of his strength. He was very strong, amazingly strong. But it wasn't enough to deal with the well-organized army that was swarming forward. That was why he sent his troops over. Perhaps they were shouting, "We heard that Lord Vast Expanse's troops didn't go well, so we specially came to help." But in their hearts, they were definitely thinking of quickly sharing some of the credit, or rather not letting Lord Vast Expanse even have the chance to save his face. Lord Vast Expanse's expression was very ugly, but he did not show his anger in front of his generals. They could only wait for about 4 hours before the 3 armies arrived. The 3 Dragon King and his subordinates were invited to the center of the vast army. The throne of the carriage became spacious and became like a balcony. The 4 of them seemed to be led by Lord Boundless, but in reality they were discussing matters together. When the Dragon King of North Sea was in the palace on Penglai Island, he saw an old white-haired old man. But now that he was leading an army and had changed into his military uniform, he looked like an old general who had been on the battlefield for a long time. After sitting down with Chu Liao Dragon King and Chichuan Dragon King, he first cupped his hands and laughed. "Aya, we came uninvited. Lord Vast Expanse will be angry. He will be angry." As he spoke he looked at the other 2. Originally, when Lord Vast Expanse sent his troops, of course it would be successful. But us brothers, listen to the movements, say, don't waste your breath. Lord Vast Expanse's face was gloomy as he interrupted the old dragon. "The 3 of you each brought 1,000 troops to me. Do you think I don't know what you want to do?" The Dragon King of North Sea hurriedly said, "Not at all. We came in a hurry, our troops are still on the way. We are no closer to the Eastern Sea than Lord Vast Expanse." But at this time Lord Vast Expanse did not seem to want to give these people any face. He laughed coldly and continued his previous words, "Divide the credit. My vast army first investigated Li Yunxin's situation, then you brought people over. If we really fought, I would still be the main force. If we won, you would end up with the reputation of the allied army. I'm rather puzzled. Who do you want to show this reputation to?" The Dragon King of North Sea laughed again. "Lord Vast Expanse's words are incorrect." While the 4 Dragon Kings were engaged in a verbal battle, the disciples of the lifeless Immortal Gate in their army had also gathered together. Different from the vast army, the cultivators of the lifeless Immortal Gate in the remaining 7 navies had a very high status. In front of Lord Vast Expanse, Qin Fengzi was like someone being ordered around, but in the army the cultivators and necromancers of the remaining 7 navies were more like staff officers or military counselors. The commander of the necromancers in each army was the staff officer of the Dragon King or a high-ranking general, while the other necromancers under him were the staff officers of the next rank. Now that they were gathered together, although the atmosphere was much more harmonious than between the 4 Dragon Kings, It was still very subtle. Because of the sects, cultivators gathered with other cultivators, and necromancers gathered with other necromancers. Qin Fengzi and the commanders of the necromancers of the other three armies were all outside the vast army, and they had set up formations around them so that the conversation between the four of them wouldn't be heard by others in the army. The three of them looked at Qin Fengzi setting up the formation with a strange expression. After he finished setting up the formation, one of them said, Don't you think this is a good idea?" When Qin Fengzi was setting up the formation, the sentries near the army were watching. There were also other soldiers who saw it, pointing and whispering from afar. He was doing this in front of these demon soldiers and demon generals, so it was obvious that he was being cautious. It was fine if he was facing outsiders, but facing people in the same army he was being too distant. But Qin Fengzi didn't mind and smiled. "There's nothing bad about it. My place is no better than yours. The Dragon King of the vast expanse has always disliked us people from the Immortal Gate. It's fine that I can help him set up the formation. Those cultivators from the same sect are practically used by him as ordinary soldiers. Once they make a mistake, the punishment is even heavier. It can't be compared to your celestial days." The three necromancers exchanged glances and one of them sighed. "Elder Ancestor said that you are the most talented. In the end, you were sent here by such a crude person. It's a waste of your talent." Qin Fengzi smiled again. "But I have more freedom. For example, I don't need to worry about the surface when doing these things. I know that they are guarding against me and they also know that I am guarding against them. We can be considered to understand each other. Let's talk about these things later. Why are the three of you here? Is it because of the soul-seizing formation?" The necromancer who spoke earlier replied, "Yes. A day ago, Qin Fengzi tried to communicate with Li Yunxin before the battle, and sold half of Lord Vast Expanse's secrets. He told them what kind of formation the three armies were using, and about the soul-seizing formation under the sea. Actually, this so-called soul-seizing formation wasn't really a secret. The 9 armies of the Dragon King in the sea all had this formation. With the necromancers of the lifeless immortal sect setting up the formation, guiding and practicing, it finally became something like a standard. In the words of Li Yunxin's world, it should be classified as a strategic weapon and tool in the army. The mortal armies on land couldn't help but suffer casualties in battle. The dead soldiers not only reduced the fighting power of the army, they would also become a burden. Collecting and burying the corpses required manpower. And because the demon armies on the sea were all demons in human form, the souls of their dead were also a very valuable asset. The soul-seizing formation in the army was a formation that used this asset to collect the muddle-headed remnant souls into the formation, and then refine them into demonic energy. Then it could be used to support the soldiers who were still alive or as a means of attack. This kind of method was very difficult to implement on land, because humans always valued human relations and etiquette more than demons. If they really did this, not to mention the effectiveness of the formation, the morale of the people would definitely fall apart. Mortals paid particular attention to burial, and death was the most important thing. But if their souls were scattered after death, who would fight for them? But such a soul-seizing formation would have a very serious loss. For example, if a newly dead remnant soul contained 10% demonic energy, then after the soul-seizing formation circulation, only 30% could be used. The remaining 70% would be consumed in the circulation process. The formation was like a machine, it also needed to be replenished with energy. However, this was what the necromancers of the lifeless immortal sect said. The one who talked the most with Qin Fengzi was the head of the necromancers of the North Sea Army, San Fengzi. He answered with a yes, and his face became serious. "We are not here to snatch your credit, senior marshal brother. There is a reason for this. It happened not long ago." He lowered his voice. "There was news from the immortal sect. They said that they needed more souls. We thought about it and felt that it was about the formation in the vast sea. Senior marshal brother, did you hear anything?" Qin Fengzi was slightly stunned. "That formation? That formation has been in the vast sea for many years. All these years, the demons in the 9 seas have been fighting and killing, all the newly born remnant souls have been refined, and 70% of them have been refined into that formation. As for the demonic power inside, we don't even dare to imagine it. Why are they in such a hurry to get more souls now?" San Fengzi hesitated slightly. They probably saw this opportunity when the Nine Seas sent out their troops, and thought that it was a good opportunity. We gave the Dragon King and the others 10% of the demonic power in the soul-seizing formation, and gave them 30%. The remaining 70% is said to be consumed, but it is actually flowing to the formation in the vast sea. Recently, many demons have died in the sea. The demonic power is also considerable. Qin Fengzi frowned. I'm afraid. Elder Ancestor saw what happened at Lu Yunshan's place a few days ago. When he saw tens of thousands of Lu Yao dying, he was also tempted. But the sea is different from the land. The demons on the land were sent to their deaths by the dragon sun on the land. Although we are from the Immortal sect, we are all sea demons. If you really ask us to do those things on the land, to kill our own kind, to cut off their roots, can you do it? These two people's words were very vague, but the four of them were very clear in their hearts. In the vast sea there was a formation. Only the disciples of the Immortal sect. The core disciples of the Immortal sect knew about the existence of this formation. The necromancers of the Immortal sect provided the soul-seizing formation to the Dragon King's army of the Nine Seas. It was said that the souls of the dead demons were refined into 30% demonic power for the demon army to use, but in fact the soldiers of the Dragon King only got a small portion. The big head, the remaining 70% of the demonic energy, was gathered in the hidden grand formation in the vast sea. Until now, San Fengzi smiled bitterly. Senior Martial Brother, you think too much. You are saying that Elder Ancestor wants to be like the Dragon Sun on the land, to send the demon army of the Nine Seas to their deaths and use their souls? Huh? Even if Elder Ancestor wants to do this, the demons on the land died in the hands of the cultivators of the Daoist sect. Who will be the enemy on the sea? Speaking up to this point, he looked to the west and said, Can it be that Li Yunxin? I think he will die here today. We are afraid that he will die too quickly. After knowing that your vast sea army was defeated, the few of us hurriedly urged the Dragon King to rush over. We thought that if the few of them could restrain each other, that would give that Li Yunxing more time to breathe, and kill more demons in the future battle. We can be considered to have done our part for Elder Ancestor. Speaking up to this point, he noticed that Qin Fengzi's expression suddenly changed and he was stunned. San Fengzi frowned. Senior Martial Brother, what's wrong? But Qin Fengzi was stunned for a full 3 breaths before he blinked his eyes. Did we misunderstand Elder Ancestor's intention? Seeing his expression, the 3 of them were even more shocked. Although this Qin Fengzi had only cultivated for a short period of time and his cultivation level was low, he was very talented and was favored by that Elder Ancestor. Usually he was very calm when he did things, but now he was inexplicably shocked, as if he thought of something big. Misunderstood? San Fengzi said. What meaning? That's Li Yunxin. Qin Fengzi widened his eyes and looked towards the west. After looking for a long time, he said, That's right. Why didn't I think of it earlier? Junior Martial Brother, how did Daoist Master Purple Knight lose to Li Yunxin? You all know the details, right? San Fengzi was still frowning. Those cultivators have their eyes on the top of their heads. It's not strange for them to lose because they underestimated their enemies. That's not what I'm talking about. When Daoist Master Purple Knight attacked Li Yunxin's restriction, he said that Li Yunxin couldn't hold on and shouted to borrow a spell from the Shinryu. And it seems like he really did borrow it, which was why he was able to resist that attack. Qin Fengzi frowned as he spoke. Think about it. These Dragon Kings came to encircle Li Yunxin because they believed that Shinryu only wanted to use Li Yunxin as a training ground for the Dragon Kings on the sea. If that's the case, why would Shinryu lend him a technique and why would he dare to lend it to him? I'm afraid that the Dragon King's worries are true. Li Yunxin really received a promise from the Shinryu? Yes. Qin Fengzi said, Think about it. Although our old ancestor and the Shinryu did not have any contact. But we all know that there must be some kind of agreement in order for us to live in peace. When that Daoist Master Zai went to attack Li Yunxin, I heard that his words were also very polite. He is one of the people who understands the old ancestor's intentions the most. The Celestial Gate also said that they wanted Li Yunxin's treasures and scriptures. But if they really wanted it, the Celestial Gate has countless experts. Wouldn't it be more convenient for them to do things than these Dragon Kings who obstruct each other? Once all the experts come out, Li Yunxin would have died dozens of times already. How could he still be alive today? San Fengzi and the other two necromancers were stunned at first, then they frowned. You mean, I'm afraid that what we should do isn't to kill Li Yunxin. Qin Fengzi stared at the west, his expression changed dramatically. We should help him secretly. That was close. We almost guessed the old ancestor's intentions wrongly. Chapter 677. They didn't expect him to say something like that. The three necromancers were silent for a while before saying hesitantly, if that's the case, why didn't he tell us directly? Senior Marshal Brother, are you thinking too much? Is there something else? In my opinion, he's just afraid that there will be too many people talking. Qin Fengzi looked at the three of them. Only people like the Purple Knight Enlightened might be able to get the news. As for us, we can only guess. Or maybe he thinks that we aren't capable enough. Even if we do things casually, we won't be able to affect the overall situation. San Fengzi wasn't convinced by his words. Can't we? Senior Marshal Brother, the four of us managed to convince the Dragon King of the Four Seas to attack Li Yunxin immediately. Isn't that enough to change the overall situation? Qin Fengzi smiled. Junior Marshal Brother, why didn't the Dragon King make a move a day ago, and why didn't the rest of the Dragon Kings attack together? Was it really because of our persuasion? They aren't stupid. Even you, me, and the four of us. If we were in the position of the four Dragon Kings, we wouldn't be able to do anything. Seeing how this Li Yunxin arrogantly went to the surface of the ocean to challenge the Dragon Kings, and how he has connections with all the factions and how he always does unexpected things, do we really dare to not think about anything and just charge forward like that? San Fengzi opened his mouth as if he wasn't convinced. But he wasn't a willful person after all. After a while he said unwillingly, Senior Marshal Brother's words make sense. Li Yunxin isn't stupid and he doesn't look like he wants to die. Now that he plans to challenge the Nine Seas army by himself, it's indeed suspicious. We aren't afraid of him, but what else he has behind his back? The Dragon Kings are worried about this, that's why they are hesitating. He isn't someone we can persuade. But Senior Marshal Brother, he frowned and spread his hands, then what should we do? The current situation is like mud and it's hard to raise one's spirits. Qin Fengzi shook his head and sighed. That's why I said that although our words carry some weight in the army. But in the grand scheme of things, I'm afraid it's nothing. At this point he suddenly paused as if he was lost in thought. After pausing for 2 or 3 breaths, he turned to look at the 3 people in front of him, a complicated expression on his face. We have guessed half right, he said solemnly. The seal of the ancestors. The 3 necromancers widened their eyes, and their words were filled with surprise and envy. Seal books. The so-called book printing was a sacred art of the lifeless Immortal sect. Those with high cultivation bases could directly imprint the information into someone's divine sense. Although it could only transmit a few short sentences, it was fast. Although the 3 of them were the leaders of the necromancers in the Dragon King's army, they could count the number of times they had seen the ancestor in person. Now that they knew that Qin Fengzi had obtained news of that person, they knew that their senior martial brother had a lot of weight in their ancestor's heart. After receiving the ancestor's decree, you should take a bath and burn incense. But this is an emergency. Qin Fengzi glanced at the vast army and said, we shouldn't attract too much attention. Junior brothers, please listen carefully. Our ancestor said, the vast sea god seizing array will be opened in the month. Do everything possible to stabilize the 9 Seas Navy in the East Sea. No mistakes. As he spoke, the 4 of them looked solemn and their bodies were extremely straight. After saying this, they relaxed a little. After a moment of silence, Qin Fengzi said in a low voice, the world is going to change. The other 3 did not speak and their expressions were extremely complicated. At this moment they realized that Qin Fengzi had guessed half right. The existence of Li Yunxin was useful to their ancestor. But this usefulness was not the result of their conspiracy, nor did it seem to be a deliberate cooperation. It was more like a coincidence that they had caught up to a certain point. The existence of a god-seizing array in the vast sea was known to the few necromancers. In fact, there were not many people in the 9 Seas who knew about this. There should be at least a dozen of them. They did not know when this god-seizing array was set up, but it must have existed for longer than the 9 Dragon Kings' existence. That array was so big that half of the vast sea was in it, which made it extremely difficult to be discovered. The God-seizing array used by the Nine Seas Navy was a child array of the God-seizing array. It continuously transferred 70% of the demon power of the dead demons in the sea. In Qin Fengzi's words, it had already accumulated an unknown amount of power. So his previous deduction was not wrong. That ancestor did not care much about the demon power of the demon army. What he cared more about was gathering the 9 Dragon King's soldiers in the East Sea, so that their rear would be empty. As for what to do after that, it would depend on what the God-seizing array was. The 4 of them knew clearly what this meant. Right now they were like a small fish drifting in the waves. They just knew that they were about to capsize, but they did not know what was outside the waves. Besides being surprised, they also panicked. If things changed, what should they do in the Nine Seas Navy? Li Yunxin's arrival should be a coincidence. It should be like this, right? Therefore the old ancestor also wanted to use him as a part of his plan. Qin Fengzi thought of this and couldn't help but say, a strong person like him. The 3 necromancers beside him knew what he meant. Li Yunxin was the Dragon King of the continent, and he had the cultivation of Xi mystical realm. But speaking of strength, he might have already surpassed the advanced mystical realm. This person's strength was witnessed by many people in the ocean these days. But even such a strong person seemed to be the same as these small fish, swept into the big waves and didn't know it. This Li Yunxin really didn't know? Was it possible that, while they thought that he was just a part of the plan, he also thought the same? But this thought was too bold and rebellious. Qin Fengzi quickly suppressed this thought. Just as he was about to say something, he suddenly heard a low shout. This shout came from the west. It was undoubtedly Li Yunxin's voice. I say, the voice sounded lazy and a little impatient. Are you going to fight or not? When the necromancers heard this, the 4 Dragon Kings also heard it. Right now they were about 100 miles away from the stone pillar where Li Yunxin was hiding. With their cultivation they could clearly see what Li Yunxin was doing. He was no longer using a special method to summon those soldiers. Right now there were about 40 to 50 people on the stone pillar, and 2,000 to 3,000 people on the sea below the pillar. Densely packed together they could be counted as an army. But Lord Boundless, who had fought with him before, knew that this wasn't his full strength. He could still release thousands of ferocious beasts. Although those ferocious beasts couldn't be used in battle, they had to be guarded against. This guy is really strange and evil. Just give him a day and he has created an army. His shout was clearly a show of force. If the Dragon Kings could hear it, the demons on the sea naturally could as well. They immediately became noisy again. It was clearly a huge battle, but now it was being made into some sort of grand event. After fighting for a day, they rested for a day. More and more demon kings came from all directions. Now that they had been idle for a day, they were so bored that smoke was coming out of their heads. The newcomers could not wait to see the legendary feat of Li Yunxin charging into the enemy's formation alone again. Unfortunately, the vast army dilly-dallied and didn't send any troops. Now that they heard the Dragon King from the continent challenge them, they were overjoyed. Lord Boundless stood up and looked at the stone pillar. Li Yunxin was sitting on the side of the stone pillar, his legs dangling down. He was holding a blue notebook and a pen in his hand. This kind of behavior was rare in this world, but it wasn't rare in his previous world. If he was wearing a white coat, he would look like an old-school researcher observing his experiment subjects and planning to take notes. But a day ago his heart was like dead ashes and he only wanted to die. But now he had become so bored and impatient it was very strange. But Lord Boundless had dealt with him a few times. He already knew that he couldn't use common sense to judge this guy. He used to hear that he was eccentric, but now he knew that he really lived up to his reputation. That North Sea Dragon King also frowned and squinted, staring at Li Yunxin for a while. What does he mean? Lord Boundless sneered. What does he mean? He saw the 3 of you coming to disturb me, so he knew that I wouldn't send troops for a while. So he challenged me to lower my spirit and let those restless ones around me cause a bit of a ruckus. It's just a bluff. So he was just putting on an act when he came to my army. To think that I thought he was a real hero. Saying this, he waved his hand impatiently. Just wait and see. The longer you and I are entangled here, the more he wants. North Sea Dragon King heard him say this and breathed a sigh of relief. He leaned back on the chair again, assuming the posture of an old man. If that's the case, then what else is there to? But he heard Li Yunxin shout again. Just like last time, he used his supernatural power so that everyone on the ocean could hear. If you don't attack, I will. Lord Boundless snorted again and sat back on the throne. But then he stood up like a spring. He saw Li Yunxin wave his hand. The thousands of soldiers he had stationed on the surface of the ocean had actually swarmed over to kill him. The 4 dragon kings looked at each other. What the hell is he doing now? The 3,000 soldiers that Li Yunxin had placed at the forefront all looked like they were carved from the same mold. When he was drawing, he was lazy. He only carefully drew one, dipped the brush in ink and threw the rest into the air as if Nuwa had created humans. This group of soldiers held big sabers, which shone under the sun as if each of them was holding a mirror. The officer next to Lord Boundless had never seen such a formation, but he was nervous. So he plucked up the courage to ask Li Yunxin who these people were so that he would not be so nervous. Li Yunxin, who had sat on the rock for a whole night, no longer looked dejected like yesterday. He looked energetic and full of fighting spirit. Perhaps he had thought it through, or perhaps he had used some method to suppress some of his feelings somewhere in his heart. So he actually replied to him. He said a bunch of strange words half seriously and half jokingly, which the officer naturally did not understand. Perhaps in his previous world not everyone could understand it. In fact, it was related to what happened in his previous life. After he decided to take revenge in his previous life, he wholeheartedly devoted himself to this matter, which could give him a sense of belonging in this world. With his character, of course, he had to think everything through. How to get close to that person, how to catch that person were not the details. The real details were to plan when and what kind of torture tools to use, which could make people feel the most intense pain and fear. After thinking of many ways, he finally decided to use knives. So he investigated and studied. First, he came into contact with a group of cold weapon enthusiasts, and then he came into contact with more weapon enthusiasts. With his character, he was too lazy to talk to those people, just like how people were too lazy to argue with cats and dogs. But for some strange reason, he also realized that arguing and quarreling with others could actually stir up some of his emotions and cause a strange ripple in his heart. So he slowly regarded it as an interesting change in his life. After a while, he found that some people who were no different from cats and dogs in his eyes actually knew more about some things than he did, which was also a wonderful thing for him. It was like finding a novel pattern on a huge piece of white paper which could kill a lot of time. It was also at that time that he realized that he had such a strong curiosity and desire for knowledge. It turned out that there were more interesting people in this world than he had expected. He thought that he was smarter than others, but in fact, there were some not-so-smart people who could make him sigh at their inferiority after being in the same place for a long time. Because of this, he got to know 1 or 2 people. But what happened to them after that was a different story. In short, he learned some things at that time. For example, some people praised the broadsword of the Tang dynasty, some felt that the crossbow of the Qin dynasty was powerful, and some said that the huge crossbow of the Song dynasty was comparable to the gunpowder weapons of the later generations. These kinds of views were pursued by many people, and of course there were also people who opposed them. So they said things like, Tang battleship cutting sword, Qin star destroying crossbow, Song electromagnetic cannon, and so on. When he came to this world, he would sometimes think about the things that happened back then, and he would feel that those boring and unbearable days in his previous life, when he thought about it now, could actually be considered interesting in a certain sense. So he made these things first. But at this moment it wasn't just for fun, it was for serious, to do experiments. He felt that he was about to understand some things. If the evil king of the Pitfall Mountain and the 7 sons of the evil king were the projections of characters he knew in his original world and were drawn into this world, then what about other things? It was true that the cultivators and demons of this world possessed terrifying power. But in his original world, there were some terrifying powers that even the cultivators and demons couldn't imagine. With the cultivation of the art saint, why didn't he create those things? Since he didn't, was there some kind of restriction? He gradually figured out a set of rules in his mind. Now it was time to see if the set of rules was correct. Chapter 678. The two main points of this set of rules had something in common with the way of painting turning illusions into reality and the method he used to create a body for the ninth young master. First, it needed a core. Second, it needed the power to wrap around the core. It could also be said that first, it needed a source of power. Second, it needed a method to guide the power from the source to here. This world had incense and the power of wishes. Many people believed, or seemed to believe in something. Then they could actually create it. This was a rule that was different from his world. Li Yunxin believed that there was a theory that could explain this rule. In the end, it could even be summarized into the knowledge system of his world. However, the technology tree of this world seemed to have been skewed at the beginning because of the unique base environment. Thus, no one had taken this path. What he could do now was just like the Middle Ages in his world. He could only start from the surface, and not seek to understand it fully. Based on his deduction, if the rules of the two worlds had something in common, then was the existence of the evil king and the seven sons also due to the power of wishes? In his original world, at least tens of millions of people knew of these two things. Thus, they produced a powerful power of wishes. The art saint used some method, the technique of turning illusions into reality, to first create a core in this world. Then, through this core, he guided the power of wishes of the tens of millions of people in his world into this world. Because of the established rules of this world, the power of wishes became the powerful power that the evil king possessed. He created a mysterious realm demon. Speaking roughly from the perspective of quantity, the hundreds of millions of people in the Li kingdom created Emperor Li, who was at the peak of the mysterious realm. The tens of millions of people of the Qing kingdom created a real Qing emperor. The power of wishes that the evil king possessed might not lose to that of Emperor Li. However, it should belong to the weak faith category. Thus, its power was between the two. If this deduction was correct, then it would create a few other problems. When he was in the city of Wei, he had just stepped into the mysterious realm and created a dragon lady body for Mrs. Sanhua. The dragon lady was originally something that existed in his world. The number of people who knew of her existence should be in the millions or tens of millions. Such a thing was brought into this world by him, so it should have been extremely powerful and possessed the same divine powers as the evil king. But the result was that she could only unleash the power of her physical body. There was no miraculous ability that exceeded common sense. Furthermore, he was foolish to begin with. He was merely a shell without a soul. Later on, he created the body of the ninth young master Ba Wei. And he succeeded. That body was extremely powerful and possessed divine abilities. This matter was indeed an experiment of his. The cores of the two experiments were created by him through the methods of the painting Dao. But the first wish power came from his world and the second wish power came from this world. Li Yunxin felt that this factor should not affect the results of the experiment too much. With the example of the evil king and the seven sons, it had already proved that the will of his world should be usable. Then the difference should be in the core. Although they both used the methods of the painting Dao, the ninth young master's core had 2 layers, while the dragon lady's core only had 1 layer. The second layer of the ninth young master's core was the Ba Wei body. And the core of the Ba Wei body was the token that came from the scale shard on Xinryu's body. It seemed that the shard had played a key role. At that time he felt a little regretful. If he could return to the past, he would cut open the bodies of the evil king and the 7 sons, and carefully look inside to see if there was anything he did not expect. Thus, a few days ago he obtained a drop of Xinryu's blood, and through the ninth young master he obtained another scale. Now he spent a lot of effort to divide the scale into many pieces, and then created the people on the rock and the sea. The people on the rock and the sea were the 2 experimental control groups. They were used to test the different performance under the situation of the amount of willpower. The people on the rock were characters from a famous game in his previous world. The number of believers should be huge. As for the soldiers on the sea, the source of willpower should be a certain group of cold weapon enthusiasts, which was considered a very small group. As for the drop of red on his forehead, he risked his life and endured great pain to obtain it from Xinryu. Once he verified his idea through this experiment, he would be able to play a greater role. These 2 things seemed easy to obtain, but it was the result of meticulous planning. But even so, compared to their possible use, it seemed to be a little too easy. Did Xinryu know about these things? Did he know about the rules that he was guessing now? Xinryu, 2,000 years ago when he appeared with the art saint, How did he come about? The idea that had been lingering in his heart, but he did not dare to confirm it, seemed to be about to be confirmed. Thus, Li Yunxin lowered his head and used the pen in his hand to mark something on the book and said in a low voice, "Go." The first row of soldiers armed with broadswords swarmed towards the front of the vast army 100 miles away. At this time, people finally realized that these soldiers with strange weapons were not ordinary people. They stepped on the surface of the sea but did not sink. Wherever they stepped on, the surface of the sea turned flat and a chill spread. It was actually frozen. Li Yunxin nodded slightly. This was a magical ability that he had specially added when he was drawing these people. Now it seemed to be a part of it. Little Colonel looked at him from the side, completely confused. For a smart person like Li Yunxin, the way he spoke was actually very similar to the art saint in the translucent jade scroll. He always liked to jump around in his thoughts. The things he said to Little Colonel often did not make sense, so how could this little demon understand? But even if he did not understand what he was saying, he could see what was happening in front of him. In a war, having more people did not mean winning. The most important thing was the formation. Li Yunxin did not have many opportunities to come into contact with these things before, and now he just wanted to give it a try, so he did not care too much. But in Little Colonel's eyes, he became anxious. He knew that his life was now in the hands of this Wei River Dragon King. If this Dragon King died, he probably would not survive either. So he said anxiously with fear and trepidation, Dragon King, I have something to say, but I don't know if I should say it." At this moment, Li Yunxin was sitting on the stone pillar, quickly writing something down in the book. Hearing this, he said without raising his head, "Then don't say it." Little Colonel was about to say something, but he stopped. After holding it in for a while, he said with a red face and ears, "Then I have to say it even if I have to risk my life." Only then did Li Yunxin move his eyes away from the book, looked at him and frowned. After thinking for a while, he threw a small flag to him and said, "Take it and play with it." Little Colonel hurriedly caught the flag in his hand. When he was about to ask again, he felt a mysterious power coming from the flag. That power was connected with the soldiers who were running forward. Undoubtedly, it was the flag that could control them. He thought that he would have to spend a lot of effort to persuade this unexpected Dragon King to listen to his suggestions. Unexpectedly, happiness came so suddenly. He gave him the flag. After being stunned for a while, he hurriedly immersed his divine sense into it. Little Colonel's cultivation was indeed low, but he was smart. Otherwise, he would not have been favored by Lord Donghai, and he would not have been sent to serve Li Yunxin. Since he held the position of captain in the Donghai army, he was better than Li Yunxin when it came to marching and fighting. After a few breaths, he barely knew how to use it. Then he hurriedly waved the flag and ordered the soldiers to form a cone-shaped formation. In this era, the pace of marching and fighting was very slow. It was common for the two sides to arrange their troops and engage each other for several hours. Now, the demon army on the sea and Li Yunxin's heavenly soldiers were not ordinary people, but they were not fast either. Little Colonel changed the formation, but there was still some distance between him and the vast army. He felt a little relieved and thought about the crossbowmen and the soldiers on the bed. But he found that they were still standing under the stone pillar, and it seemed that they did not intend to move. However, the command flag in his hand could only command the soldiers who were wielding the broadswords, and could not command these people. So he said carefully, "Dragon King, these soldiers, I think, just stay here." Li Yunxin did not look at him. "It's 100 miles away. Are you afraid that we can't hit them?" Little Colonel finally confirmed that this Wei River Dragon King really did not know how to use troops. Maybe he was used to being a big demon. 100 miles was a very short distance for a big demon, but not all the soldiers were big demons. In a war, a person's magical power was not important, but the cooperation of the formation was important. These crossbowmen and soldiers on the bed couldn't even see the enemy from 100 miles away, and they couldn't even tell the enemy from the enemy. What was the use? Moreover, which small demon could hit 100 miles away? He was not the only one who thought like this. The four Dragon King were shocked when they saw Li Yunxin dared to send troops to attack, but then they realized the same thing as Little Colonel. This Li Yunxin did not know how to fight a war at all. Everyone knew that the infantry was in front and the archers were behind, but they also knew how to coordinate. If he ordered the infantry to attack like this, it was almost like sending them to their deaths. When the infantry died, the archers would be very weak. All the generals under their command knew this, but Li Yunxin did not. When the North Sea Dragon King saw this, he heaved a sigh of relief and smiled. He stretched out his hand and pointed into the distance. Lord Vast Expanse, this way River Dragon King's battle technique AI isn't too brilliant. Look this, the few of us, we're all here to support Lord Houhan. He frowned and waved his hand. No, what do you mean by stealing the credit? He spread his hand again. Who are we bragging to, Don't you think so? Chuliao Dragon King and Chichuan Dragon King hurriedly said, Yes. Lord Houhan, you can't be impulsive and delay the battle. Otherwise the three of us can send troops to help Lord Houhan scout the situation first, so that your soldiers can rest for a while. Chapter 679. The vast Dragon King looked at them with a straight face, not saying a word. Seeing that the two Dragon King coughed in embarrassment, he suddenly smiled coldly. All right. You two go. The two Dragon King were stunned. Didn't you want to take advantage of the situation? Lord Vast Expanse smiled coldly. Since you saw that this Li Yunxin doesn't know anything about military affairs and doesn't have any strategy, I'm sure the three of you are eager to try, thinking that if you can defeat him in front of the demons, wouldn't that be a great merit? He took 2 steps forward, his gaze sliding across the 3 Dragon Kings' bodies, and said mockingly, Of course you won't be able to report your merits. But you can earn some face in front of the demons and let everyone in the ocean know. The Vast Expanse army has always called itself the strongest in the ocean, but in front of Li Yunxin they lost with their faces covered in dirt. Now that he has sent out his troops and you've led your troops to help the Vast Expanse army, you've actually beaten back his menacing army. Isn't that a great honor and a great merit? After saying this, Lord Vast Expanse turned around and walked back to his throne. The North Sea Dragon King hurriedly said, How can you say that? I didn't mean that. Lord Vast Expanse smiled again. Old dragon, if you say something like that again, I'm going to turn against you. I can tolerate you guys coming to take advantage of me, but on the other hand you're trying to fool me with stupid words. Do you think I'm stupid? When I do things, I always like to say things clearly. Unlike you cowards who say one thing and do another. Since you want to go? Then go. Do you think I'm joking? Those who were familiar with the Vast Expanse Dragon King all knew that if he kept calling him he would most likely fly into a rage. The North Sea Dragon King stopped smiling at this point. He stood up, no longer hiding his expression, and looked suspiciously at the Dragon King on the throne. Lord Vast Expanse. Why? The Vast Dragon King curled his lips and waved his hand. I was defeated by Li Yunxin. To tell you the truth, I'm still worried that he might have some tricks up his sleeves. If something were to go wrong this time, it would be a disgrace. In Lu Ke's words, a disgrace to his grandmother's house. Then you guys can go. Even if I win, it's just a small merit. If I lose, it's not like I'll lose face. He leaned forward slightly and looked at the 3 Dragon King. His expression became fierce again. But if you still want to take credit after winning the first battle and finding out the real situation of Li Yunxin's troops, I'll be frank with you first. Yesterday I've transferred another 80,000 troops here. They're on the way. Don't blame me for killing you too. The Dragon King of the North Sea coughed and waved his hands. No, we're brothers, how could we? As he said this, he looked at the 2 Dragon King beside him and laughed. Then shall we first do this for Lord Vast Expanse? The 2 could no longer hold themselves back and agreed in unison. The old Dragon King of the North Sea suddenly straightened his body and returned to his old but firm and spirited appearance. He shouted in a deep voice, Gather the troops. The 3 Dragon Kings had only brought a total of 3,000 troops. But they were the elites of the elites. They were their bodyguards. Most of them were at the peak of the emptiness realm and some were at the transcendent realm. In terms of combat power, they might be stronger than the vanguard of the Vast Expanse army. Although the emptiness realm and the transcendent realm were not great demons, when they were organized into an army and armed with formations and weapons, their power could not be measured simply by their realms. After a few orders, the 3 sea beastkin armies in bright armor gathered together and formed a formation. In one spurt of energy, they advanced for over 20 li and waited for the arrival of the troops under Li Yunxin's command. The 4 necromancers of the lifeless immortal sect also saw this scene. Sanfengzi frowned. Why are they not Lord Vast Expanse's men? Qinfengzi looked towards the center of the army and said, I'm afraid that my lord is afraid of Li Yunxin. He is worried that this is another one of his tricks. But the 3 lords of my junior martial brothers are full of confidence and have taken on this task. Saying this, he shook his head. I'm also curious what other tricks Li Yunxin has up his sleeves. Let's wait and see. At this time the 2 armies were only about 10 li apart. Different from Li Yunxin's Tang army, whose steps and expressions were the same, the demon soldiers of the Dragon King of the 3 Seas were very agile. They formed a 3-layer formation. The first row was made up of heavily armored infantrymen. Every one of them was as tall as 3 strong men in the mortal world. They looked like a row of small mountains protruding from the surface of the sea. They were wearing shell armors that were enchanted with magic. They were lighter and sturdier than normal iron armors. Because they were the personal soldiers of the Dragon King, there were beautiful carvings on their armors that were plated with gold powder. And because the sea was rich in resources, the armors of the generals who led the army were decorated with resplendent gems that glittered under the sunlight. This row of heavily armored infantrymen was lined up in one place. They held huge shields and long swords in their hands. They looked like an impregnable great wall of the sea. Behind them was a row of long spear soldiers. These long spear soldiers weren't holding ordinary weapons. Instead, they were radiance formed from demon power. They were at least 30 zhang long and were held in their hands. They stretched out from the waists and shoulders of the heavily armored infantrymen, causing the surrounding air to distort. Slightly further behind and further away were the archers. But the weapons in their hands weren't ordinary bows and arrows. In fact, they were completely different from the bows and arrows of the mortal world. They were in groups of 3. 2 of them cast their arts and pulled open a screen of light in midair. The other person cast a spell behind the screen of light. Countless densely packed, rapidly spinning bright red dots appeared on the screen of light. Just by looking at it from afar, one could tell that it contained violent power. The sharp whistling sound made the surface of the water incessantly stir up tiny splashes, which then evaporated into a vast mist that hid these archers. In another 15 minutes, the faces of those Tang soldiers could be seen. They all looked the same. They all looked like Li Yunxin. They were tall and burly, but not as tall as the heavily armored demon soldiers in the first row. When they were about 2 li away from the demon soldiers, they raised the big swords in their hands. The reflected sunlight illuminated a large area of the sea. The seawater quickly condensed in front of them, but the demon soldiers didn't move. When they were about 1 li away, a long command sounded from the demon army. Ready, fire. The first 2 rows of demon soldiers didn't move, but the last row of archers suddenly shone brightly. Countless lines of fire rose from the formation. In the blink of an eye, they covered the sky and formed a screen of fire. It was as if the whole sky was burning, or as if a cloud of fire had appeared out of nowhere. This cloud of fire was like a huge blanket, covering the front line of the Tang soldiers. There was almost no sound. More than 3,000 infantry soldiers disappeared in an instant. They didn't even have time to scream and turned into ashes in the blink of an eye. Even the hard ice on the surface of the sea was blasted away, and the seawater gushed out again. After this round of firing, there were only about 1,000 soldiers left. But they still didn't show any fear or any expression. Even their steps were not messed up. They still rushed out of the fire and smoke and went straight to the front of the formation. It was as if everyone only had one goal: to move forward. Other than that, even things like killing the enemy and protecting their lives could be ignored. The moment the command to fire sounded, the 4 Dragon Kings sitting in the middle of the formation all straightened their bodies subconsciously. Although they all felt that Li Yunxin didn't understand the battle formation and sent these infantry soldiers to their deaths, they still felt a little uneasy. For example, if these guys were as strong as those ferocious beasts, it would be very difficult to deal with them. Only when they saw that they were shrouded in the cloud of fire and had no chance to resist were they relieved. They knew that it was reasonable. North Sea Dragon King exhaled lightly, smiled and looked at the gloomy Lord Haohan. It's time for us to do this for Lord Haohan. So Lord Haohan glared at him. Then he frowned and looked at Li Yunxin on the stone pillar far away. What the hell is he doing? At this time, Li Yunxin was also watching. His expression was very calm. It was as if what turned into ashes was not his soldiers, but some numbers on a piece of paper. He was calm, but the colonel beside him couldn't be calm. That attack just now should have wiped out more than 3,000 soldiers. Fortunately, he was in the middle and told them to dodge so that they could survive. But he was already panicking. He thought that this way River Dragon King told them to move forward bravely because of their strong bodies. Who knew that now they were not even as strong as ordinary demon soldiers? It was fine if they were few and weak. But they didn't cooperate, wouldn't they lose for sure? If they lost, what would he do? He had a bad habit, and that was when he panicked he would stutter, Dragon King. This. Li Yunxin turned to look at him. What's wrong? The colonel stared at him and pointed forward. Dragon King, look at this. More than half of the casualties, I think it's better. Li Yunxin turned his face away, jotted something in his notebook and said casually, then you did a good job. I thought we were all going to die. Keep up the good work. The Dragon King. The junior colonel was on the verge of tears. The Dragon King is very resourceful. Even if he's defeated, he'll still have a way to escape. But I have parents and I have... Stop acting like a spoiled child. Be quiet. Li Yunxin became impatient and shouted, Did Donghai Emperor send you here to cry for me? Go to the front if you want to make a scene. The colonel quickly shut up and panicked again, did not know what to say. Li Yunxin lowered his head and jotted something in his notebook. In the span of a few words, the Tang soldiers had already rushed to the front of the demon army. At this time, Li Yunxin straightened up and even slightly narrowed his eyes as if he finally became serious. But he still did nothing and just watched carefully, not letting go of any detail. The remaining Tang soldiers barely maintained a cone-shaped formation and bumped into them. Dozens of people in the front were immediately pierced by the light spears of the spearmen. But they did not die and continued to move forward bravely without any fear or pain. At this time, these soldiers showed some of the skills that Wei River Dragon King soldiers should have. The light spears of the demon soldiers were not only sharp, but also had other magical powers. If it was a battle between mortals, the first row of spears would retreat and stab again after piercing through the enemy. But the light spears did not need to retreat. Instead, they flickered and soon exploded the punctured wounds. The golden light flashed 3 or 4 times, and a burly Tang soldier was blown into pieces. But the Tang soldiers only broke through 1 point. After nearly 100 casualties, they finally met the enemy. They met the huge shields of the first row of demon soldiers. The square shields were linked together, flickering with light. It was obvious that they were also enchanted with magic. Although the sabers in the hands of the Tang soldiers were big, they were like daggers in front of the heavily armored soldiers. These soldiers, who finally rushed to the front after paying a huge price, immediately raised the sabers in their hands and slashed at the enemy without any expression. But they did not cut through the shields first. The light flashed and it seemed that the magic inhibition was the first to bear the attack. After about 2 or 3 flashes, the magic inhibition was finally broken by the sabers. But they could only hear a continuous dang sound, as if someone was hitting a porcelain bottle with a wooden stick. Finally, all the Tang soldiers bumped into the first row of the demon army. But it was like a gentle and powerless stream bumping into a hard reef. It only took a quarter of an hour. The remaining Tang soldiers were completely annihilated outside the first row, and could not even cut through one side of the square shields. It was like a drama with a strong beginning and a weak ending. It started with a bang but ended in the blink of an eye. The surface of the sea was calm again, and the ice where the Tang soldiers passed quickly melted, and the water sparkled again. The 4 Dragon Kings called Zhongjuan were stunned for a while. Then the North Sea Dragon King coughed. This is really... He wanted to say it was just a farce or it was just SOSO. He wanted to say, did Lord Haohan really lose to this kind of person? But when he saw the Dragon King's gloomy face, he could only say, this is really an easy first merit. Lord Haohan, no matter what tricks he has up his sleeves, we have all taken them. Maybe Lord Haohan doesn't even need to do anything, we can capture him. And then let you deal with him, Don't you think so? The Dragon King stared coldly at the 3 Dragon Kings for a while, and then took a deep breath. I advise you not to celebrate too early. This Li Yunxin is cunning. I'm afraid it was just a diversion and he still has tricks up his sleeves. As he said this, he raised his hand and pointed into the distance. He still has those crossbow soldiers. Why don't they come forward? Can they shoot from 100 miles away? If they stay there, I'm afraid they will have other tricks later. But when he said this, he was stunned again. Far away in the sky, a dark cloud suddenly appeared. He was shocked and got up from his throne to take a closer look. That was indeed a cloud. But it was a cloud of arrows. Innumerable arrows were shot into the sky, whistling straight in their direction. When the Tang soldiers were all wiped out, the only one who looked worse than Lord Haohan was probably the lieutenant colonel next to Li Yunxin. Holding the useless flag, he stood there in a daze, but did not dare to act like a spoiled child again. All he saw was Li Yunxin writing something down in his blue notebook and mumbling something. He could not hear clearly and could only make out some vague words. For example, things like, indeed strengthened, but that shouldn't be the case. It should be the overall effect. These people are not good enough. There is indeed a critical value, and so on. Chapter 680. It was not until Li Yunxin stopped writing and sat down as if she was thinking about something again that he carefully whispered, "Dragon King, now, what should we do?" Li Yunxin threw away his brush and stood up. After muttering angrily, he looked at him seriously. "Don't you know, negative emotions are contagious? I'm fighting and listening to you cry the whole time. I'm telling you now, my patience has run out. Get lost." After saying this, he suddenly waved his hand, and a gust of demonic wind sent the little scroll to the bottom of the stone pillar. Under the stone pillar were the crossbow soldiers. The arrows on the huge crossbow bed of the Song soldiers were as long as 3 people and as thick as a thigh. The little scroll was sent to the crossbow by the demonic wind and was immediately restrained by an invisible force. Only then did he scream, "Dragon King! Dragon King! What are you doing? I'm here to help you." Li Yunxin clasped his hands behind his back on the stone pillar and laughed coldly. "Why aren't you stuttering now? Go back and tell your Lord Donghai, telling the horse to run and telling the horse not to eat grass. I said I'd help him to pacify the 9 seas, so he came to help. In the end he sent a piece of trash like you. Now I'm surrounded here, I'm so frustrated." "Fuck, no need." Li Yunxin glared at him. "If you want to live, go tell that Lord Haohan." He narrowed his eyes and laughed coldly. "In his army, those people from the lifeless Immortal sect are preparing to plot against them. Their 10,000-year-old ancestor is in cahoots with the Shinryu. They're the ones who told me to come here to cause trouble and kill Dragon King." The little scroll's eyes widened. Li Yunxin snorted. "What Otherwise, how do you think I know that every army is using the 5 elements formation? The formation I is on the leading general, but Xing, Du, Jing and Xiu gates are broken. Otherwise, how do you think I know that every army is using the soul-seizing formation underwater? Otherwise, how do you think I killed my way into the middle army? Because those people from the lifeless Immortal sect went easy on us." "Damn it." Li Yunxin paced back and forth on the stone pillar. "You asked me to do something. In the end, I've been stuck here alone for so long. My entire army is about to be wiped out and no reinforcements have come. All of you on the sea are a bunch of cowards. Coward. Coward. Then we'll all die together. Do you see this? Did you see that?" He raised his hand and pointed at the blood on his forehead. "Shinryu gave it to me. Have you heard of that legend? There's a treasure on the Cloud Mountain, and if I get it, I'll be able to control all the demons in the world. Why, if you haven't heard of it, they must have heard of it, that's the thing. If they wanted it, they could take it with their own abilities. I'll give it to you when I get it." "Damn it, fire the arrows." Li Yunxin raised his hand and pointed. The thousands of crossbowmen immediately acted like one person and pulled the trigger in unison. A buzzing sound that caused the stone pillar to tremble was heard. The arrows that covered the sky and the earth shot out hundreds of miles away. The small colonel let out a miserable scream in midair, but very quickly, it spiraled far away and could no longer be heard. The irritable expression on Li Yunxin's face immediately calmed down. He turned around, raised his hand and pointed at the dozens of other characters from his world on the stone pillar. "Go, go, go, you guys go too." These dozens of people were not as stupid as those soldiers. Hearing his words, they actually reacted. but they were still slightly sluggish, not as nimble as ordinary people. The green armored swordsman held the long blade in his hand horizontally, and said in a low, muffled voice, "Summoner, where is this?" Bastard Canyon. Li Yunxin said snappily, "The enemy will arrive at the battlefield in 30 seconds. Go quickly. Crush them." Hearing his words, these dozens of people seemed to have received some kind of order, a hint. Their expressions immediately turned serious, and like the wind, they jumped off the stone pillar and ran far away. So Li Yunxin reached out his hand and pressed the drop of blood on his forehead, then turned around expressionlessly. Qin Fengzi was able to deduce some things. How could someone as smart as him not be able to deduce it? Since the ancient times when two armies fought, there had never been anyone who would suddenly collude with the enemy and plan to betray them. Although he wasn't clear about the details of the lifeless immortal sect, he knew that people with normal intelligence wouldn't use Qin Fengzi's method to lure them to surrender. This meant that what he said was very likely true. Previously, when he fought against the Purple Knight Enlightened, the guy who didn't leave a bad impression on him didn't use his full strength at the start. Actually, at that time he was already a little suspicious. It was also at that time that he did something daring. He borrowed a magical ability from the Shinryu to block the Purple Knight Enlightened's second attack. Borrowing a magical ability wasn't a rare thing. Low-level demons could attach themselves to a human and walk around using the human's body. This could also be considered a kind of borrowing a magical ability. However, there were only two more profound methods. One was when one side's cultivation was overwhelming the others. For example, the profound realm against the transcendent realm, or the true realm against the emptiness realm. One could borrow a magical ability. But under these circumstances, the borrowed magical ability wasn't very useful. It was purely for fun. The other was through some kind of secret method. For example, if two people were in some kind of formation, they could use the formation's power to transform and borrow the magical ability. But this kind of formation was extremely mysterious and only existed in legends. At the time, Li Yunxin borrowed Shinryu's magical ability, and used this method to create a formation. But in reality he didn't know anything about this borrowing magical ability formation. The reason he could do this was because of another reason. A reason that would soon be known by others. And the reason he did this was to test the strength of the current Shinryu. From the time he left Dingzhou until now, he had encountered a total of 2 unimaginable situations. The first time was when he fought against Dao Lord Dragon Fifth at the foot of Cloud Mountain. Someone very far away from him, had interfered with the Reiki of heaven and earth around him. That kind of technique could be described as moving 1,000 pounds with little effort. At an extremely critical moment, that person used an extremely small movement to cause great damage to him. At that time his spiritual power was instantly cut off, and he couldn't circulate it properly. If he didn't have a backup plan, he would have been defeated by the Dao Lord. That person really wanted him dead. And that kind of power. Li Yunxin thought about it for a long time afterward and realized that it didn't belong to either the Xian men or the painting Dao. At that time that person was by Li Chuanfeng's side, and Li Yunxin thought that that person was the mysterious owner of Southwood House. The second time was in the East Sea. The person who displayed some kind of unimaginable power was the Heavenly Lord Shinryu. When he risked a showdown with her, the furious Heavenly Lord Shinryu almost set the entire ocean on fire, and almost burned the body of a powerful dragon son like Li Yunxin into ashes. There were many forms of power. To create the effect at that time, Li Yunxin could do it with a little effort. But at his current level of cultivation he could see through the surface and see the essence. Therefore he realized that what Shinryu used was not any kind of power that belonged to the Xianmen or the painting Dao. In fact, it wasn't even the magical power of the dragons. The methods used by the owner of Southwood House and Shinryu were similar, but also very different. When the owner of Southwood House made her move, she seemed to like moving 1,000 pounds with little effort. She exerted force in the smallest areas, causing a huge impact. But when Shinryu made her move, whether it was the first time they met in Dongting or when she was angry in the ocean, the momentum was huge. Although the huge momentum and the fierce method were indeed in line with the identity of the Heavenly Lord Shinryu as the master of all monsters in the world. But from another point of view, it was a loss of dignity to make such a big move to deal with the inferior. The thought of life and death of the person in power could only be seen in a smile. Only an ordinary person would frown and want blood to splash 5 steps away. Combined with the past of her using all kinds of tricks to drive a wedge between Dragon Sun and the two of them to fight each other, Li Yunxin felt that it was a sign of a guilty conscience. For example, people who were born in poverty liked to show off their wealth after they became rich, but people from aristocratic families rarely did so. Weak people always liked to bluff and make people feel that they were inviolable, but the real powerful people didn't easily make a move. However, this may also be a personal preference and style. He himself was a typical example of someone who liked to show off. Therefore, he took another risk. Through his means, he borrowed the power of Shinryu during the fight with the Purple Knight Immortal to resist his blow. The damage suffered by the borrowed power would be faithfully reflected back to the person who borrowed it. And the result of this risk was that Shinryu didn't show up. She didn't show up that time, and she didn't show up for the next few days, even if Li Yunxin called for her several times. According to the rumors in the ocean, the reason why the Heavenly Lord Shinryu and the lifeless immortal sect's 10,000-year-old ancestor were at peace was because they knew that the old ancestor didn't have any ulterior motives, and was only focused on teaching. But now, through Qin Fengzi, Li Yunxin knew that the lifeless immortal sect not only had ulterior motives, but also seemed to be planning something big. They had been planting their own people in the 9 seas for such a long time. Could it be that they hadn't been noticed? The 9 seas shouldn't be full of idiots. At least from the way that the Heavenly Lord Shinryu was tirelessly scheming, she should be extremely wary of the 10,000-year-old ancestor. But she actually got along with him. There was only one possibility. Shinryu and the 10,000-year-old ancestor were conspiring. Li Yunxin had proof. The 10,000-year-old ancestor had planted his own people in the 9 Seas army, and Shinryu also wanted to get rid of the Dragon King of the 9 Seas. There was no one in the world who was more like-minded than this. Knowing this, the situation in the ocean became more interesting. Li Yunxin didn't doubt that he was also a part of the plan that Shinryu and the 10,000-year-old ancestor had discussed, or maybe just a part that was added at the last minute. But since it was last minute, there would always be variables. If he didn't stir up the situation now, how could he be worthy of this last minute? Motherfucker! Even a cat or dog dares to make use of me. Li Yunxin's face was expressionless, but he was cursing in his heart. Then I'll trick you to death. But he wasn't the only one cursing in his heart. The small colonel was bound by his demonic energy to the huge crossbow and shot high into the sky. At first he was still praying that the arrows would fall midway, so that he could escape from Li Yunxin's 100-kilometer formation. But after 6 breaths he realized that something was wrong. The arrow rain was rising very high. Looking down from the highest point, Lord Boundless' formation was like a square on the sea, and he could even see the vague formation under the sea. It was the soldiers under the water. He looked back in the whistling wind and was immediately scared out of his wits. He was now in the middle of Li Yunxin and the vast army. This meant the arrow rain began to fall. The lethality of the arrows gradually increased as they fell. The small colonel clearly realized that the arrows were so fast that they didn't just rely on the power of the crossbow. He only felt that his internal organs were hanging in the air, as if they were going to jump out through his spine. The 3 rows of vanguard troops below, who had killed thousands of Tang soldiers without any damage, grew rapidly, and he could almost see their expressions. Even the slowest demon soldiers widened their eyes. Just like the 4 dragon kings in the central army, they didn't expect that the arrows would come so far and so fast. At this moment, dozens of figures suddenly jumped up from the sea, and then crashed into the first row of heavy-armored infantry. The light spears of the second row of spearmen were useless against them. First, a stone giant with flames flowing all over his body like bulging veins crashed into the formation. A huge wave splashed on the sea, and nearly 100 heavy-armored demon soldiers around seemed to become weightless leaves, and were pushed up into the sky along with the wave. Before the stone giant could finish his attack, a huge indigo bull demon rushed in, punched the sea with both fists and blew up another 100 people. But before those 200 people fell, a green light suddenly appeared in the sky, and shuttled through those leaves at an incredible speed, only to see clouds of mist exploding in the air one after another. Before they could fall, or even before they could use their demon power, they were all cut into halves. The small colonel's vision was blocked by the dense arrows, and they were falling fast, so he couldn't see the whole picture of the 3 lines. However, they could still catch a glimpse of a green human-shaped snake demon through the gaps, turning dozens of people into stone statues and sinking into the ocean without a sound. Then a warrior holding a spear with his hair tied up like a dragon leaped into the third row of archers. With a sweep of his spear, a group of people around him was thrown off their feet. The demonic power that was gathering in a hurry went out of control and exploded, affecting hundreds of people around him. Then a small mummy wrapped in moldy green bandages suddenly used its power, and a huge golden light array appeared around it, killing more than 100 demons. These scenes made the small colonel extremely surprised, and this surprise even temporarily suppressed his fear. These guys were so strong. If he had known this, he wouldn't have complained and annoyed that Wei River Dragon King so much that he threw him out. But the arrow rain had fallen. Those dozens of people had already caused the 3 rows of battle formations to be in a state of disarray. At this moment, a large cloud of arrows hit the sea with a bang. A huge wave suddenly broke out in the vast water as if a white-headed mountain rose from the sea. In such a fierce attack, the 3,000 elites brought by the Dragon King of the 3 Seas were all wiped out. At this time, only less than 7 minutes had passed since the 4 Dragon Kings saw the cloud of arrows in the sky. The ocean was quiet for a while. Even the Demon Kings watching the battle around them forgot to make noise. The situation changed so fast that it was beyond everyone's expectation. Previously, it took the 3,000 people less than 7 minutes to kill the thousands of Tang soldiers led by Li Yunxin. Now it took Li Yunxin's arrow rain and dozens of demons less than 15 minutes to kill the 3,000 vanguard soldiers. Right at this moment, when the waves that had been kicked up fell back into the sea, the voice of the Wei River Dragon King was heard again. "Courtesy demands reciprocity," he said lazily. "Do you think the star-destroying crossbows of Great Qin and the electromagnetic cannons of Great Song are undeserved?" Chapter 681. At this time, there was only the colonel left in the sea, which was originally filled with 3 rows of soldiers. The illusion spell that Li Yunxin cast on him had disappeared, revealing his original appearance. He stood on the water in a daze at a loss of what to do. He had planned to use the chaos after the battle and the dozens of demons as a cover to escape. But when it fell, the giant arrow that was attached to it hit a square shield. It shattered the square shield and made him dizzy. It took him a long time to come back to his senses. When he regained his consciousness and showed his face in a hurry, he found that he was in the middle of 2 armies. How could he dare to escape now? He was less than a mile away from the row of demon soldiers at the front of the vast army, and he was clearly seen by countless pairs of eyes. Although he was an inconspicuous colonel, many people recognized him because he was favored by Lord Donghai. Not to mention the fact that he came with the arrow rain. If he moved recklessly, he would be killed immediately. Even if he could escape from this place, could he escape from the ocean? That Li Yunxin was indeed a demon among demons. Falling out with him just like that, not leaving any leeway at all. It was also at this time that the colonel realized that if he didn't bring Li Yunxin's words to Lord Donghai, he might not be able to leave this sea alive. Although he was afraid of death, he was not afraid of dying for Lord Donghai. But he was afraid that if he died here, Lord Donghai would have no room to turn back. As soon as this thought appeared in his mind, the colonel immediately raised his hands and shouted, "I am the colonel of Donghai military, and I was ordered to hide beside Li Yunxin. Now that I have escaped from death, I have important news to tell Lord Haohan." After shouting like this 3 times, there was finally some sound coming from the surface of the ocean. It came from the demon kings who were watching the battle. A few days ago, when Li Yunxin defeated Han Haojuan and killed his way to the center of the army, the demon kings cheered and gloated. That was because no one believed that Li Yunxin could really win. It was like the people on the street watching a criminal who was about to be beheaded. If the prisoner in the prison cart was a coward, the people would certainly spurn him. However, if he was indifferent to life and death and had a heroic appearance, people would cheer for him and even send him a farewell wine. Although the sea demon monarchs weren't humans, their thoughts were similar. Since he wanted the power of the Dragon King, he would naturally be happy to see them suffer a setback and lose their prestige. But now, things were different. Li Yunxin's strength was beyond their expectations. Such a fellow, if he really won, wouldn't he become their opponent? Even a powerful army like the vast army had been defeated by him, so it was likely that they wouldn't have any more power in the Nine Seas in the future. Therefore by this time there was no longer any cheering. Instead, a somewhat panicked atmosphere began to spread. This guy. Just who the hell is he? Don't tell me I can't control him anymore. After 3 calls, another quarter of an hour passed before an officer rode the waves from the vast army. The green-faced fanged beast's face was extremely gloomy. When he was not far from the small school, he raised his hand and pointed the trident in his hand at him. Hey! You are from the Eastern Sea Army, the small school officer hurriedly said. Brother Qinglin, you know me. Of course I am. He was an old friend. But at this time the demon did not pay attention to him. Instead it raised its hand and threw out a rope which tied him up tightly. Then he shouted and dragged him back into the array. The small school officer didn't dare to say anything. He was already thankful that he was tied up and not killed. The small school officer was dragged all the way to the carriage of the middle army. The moment he saw the 4 dragon kings whose faces had turned even gloomier, he knelt down with a thud and kept kowtowing. He cried bitterly, dear immortals, I almost thought that I wouldn't be able to come back." The 4 dragon kings looked at him and kowtowed. After a dozen breaths, Lord Haohan sneered, "I heard that you hid beside Li Yunxin and escaped from death?" The small school officer hurriedly said, Yes. I was under orders. You were under orders to expose us." Lord Haohan stared at him with hatred. "Hide? Hee. It's true that you were under orders. I'm afraid that you were under orders to help Li Yunxin deal with us. Otherwise," he pointed at the small school officer, "how did he come and go so freely in our 5 elements array and hit the eye of the array? I was puzzled before. So it was you damned things who were causing trouble." "Guards." The small school officer hurriedly said, "My lord, please listen to me. There's a big secret behind this. My lord, I'll only dare to speak if you dismiss your subordinates. My lowly life is not to be regretted, but this is related to the rise and fall of the 9 seas. It won't be too late for my lord to kill me." But the soldiers on both sides had already strode over, grabbed his arms and dragged him to the back of the array. Lord Haohan still sat still. The small school officer panicked and shouted, "It's Wu Xing." Lord Haohan frowned and gently raised his hand. The 2 soldiers stopped for the time being. The 3 dragon kings also frowned. They looked at each other. North Sea Dragon King said in a low voice, "Lord Haohan, why don't you listen to him first?" Boundless Dragon King waved his hand again. "Stand down." He didn't need to say it a second time. No one was stupid enough to think that they weren't included. The demon generals around the carriage immediately retreated. Lord Haohan waved his hand again and a light shield rose from the throne, enveloping them. Only then did the small school officer let out a sigh of relief. He was smart enough to know that he had to say those words to this boundless dragon king. He had never liked people from lifeless immortal sect. If he had said those words to other dragon kings, they would probably have suffered. "You're talking about lifeless immortal sect?" Lord Haohan asked. "That's right." The small school officer took a deep breath and pretended to be terrified and in disbelief. "I was hiding by Li Yunxin's side and heard him tell me a huge secret. The people from lifeless immortal sect in Lord Haohan's army, they were the ones who wanted to change sides at the front line, and they were the ones who revealed the details of Lord Haohan's army to Li Yunxin." The 4 dragon kings looked at each other. Lord Haohan looked at him again. "If it was you who made up these shocking words to survive, this isn't the only shocking thing." Seeing Boundless Dragon King's expression, the small school officer became more courageous. "This is just the tip of the iceberg. I also heard that Li Yunxin said. He gritted his teeth and straightened his body. "This matter, Li Yunxin coming to our 9 seas to stir up trouble, is part of the plan of the Shinryu and the 10,000-year ancestor. They plan to kill the Dragon King of the 9 seas, and the people from lifeless immortal sect in each army are all spies. Once the time is right, they will stir up trouble together and trap us into a place of eternal damnation." He said all this in one breath and then gritted his teeth again. It was not a big deal to implicate the 10,000-year ancestor, but he actually implicated the Shinryu. At this moment there were only 2 endings waiting for him. Either he escaped from death or he would be tortured and live a life worse than death for a long time to come. The 4 dragon kings were also stunned by his words. The small school officer thought that he would have to face their harsh questioning. Unexpectedly, the storm he expected didn't come. The 4 dragon kings looked at each other solemnly and fell silent. It was as if they already had this premonition in their hearts. At this time, an untimely thought suddenly appeared in his mind. That Li Yunxin told me to say these things. Did he know that these dragon kings would have this kind of reaction? How did he know? How did that guy know everything? The 4 dragon kings were silent for a while. Then Lord Beihai asked him, Lord Donghai also knows about this? The small school officer hurriedly kowtowed, reporting to Lord Laojun, my lord has always had this suspicion, so he gathered you all together. But at that time there was no conclusive evidence, so it was inconvenient to say. He only told everyone to stay together and adapt to the situation. He pretended to be on good terms with Li Yunxin, and sent me to his side to gather information. I really escaped with my life by the skin of my teeth. Lord Laojun doesn't know how violent Li Yunxin's temperament is. It's really. At this point he wiped away his tears. Some of his tears were real. Who could stand the man on the stone pillar? Even his 2 attendants had left. Lord Haohan said in a low voice, Humph. Then our worries have come true. I always felt that there was something wrong with the people from Lifeless Immortal sect, but I couldn't find any evidence. He squinted his eyes. Shinryu? It's already been 1,000 years. I'm afraid that we will end up like those people 1,000 years ago. Then, what should we do? Chu Liao Dragon King shifted his body. Are we going to fight against the Lord God? At this point he subconsciously shrunk his neck. It seemed that just thinking about this made him feel uneasy. Chichuan Dragon King was calmer than him but not much better. He blinked uneasily. The most important thing now is to return to the fief, calm the people and deal with the big change. I think we should just retreat. Lord Haohan laughed coldly, staring at the 2 of them. Until the 2 of them were scared, he said, Go back? Have you forgotten how we came here? You really believe this damn thing's words? Did they gather all of us for the sake of a foolproof plan? I think that Lord Donghai received a promise from Shinryu, and thought that he could stay out of trouble, so he is helping Shinryu to transfer us here. Unfortunately we really fell for it and came. In my opinion you will hear the news very soon. The fief has changed. If you go back now, won't you be walking right into a trap? The 2 Dragon King were stunned. They felt that what he said made sense, but there was no way to think about it. Lord Beihai thought for a while, then said, Then, according to Lord Haohan, what should we do? Lord Haohan Dragon King looked at the colonel. Let me ask you. Before Li Yunxin sent you away, was she irritable and restless because of the previous defeat? Did he curse at Shinryu and Lifeless Immortal sect? Yes. The colonel almost bit his tongue when he said this. This before I ran away, he was indeed angry and said that Shinryu and Lifeless Immortal sect were all cowards, and that they only asked him to help, but he didn't do anything he didn't want to. Lord Haohan laughed coldly. That's it. We were lured here to make it easier for them to do something to our fief. We have already fallen into the trap. At this time we can't let them lead us by the nose. He frowned, his voice getting deeper. This Li Yunxin first delayed my army here for 2 days. Just now he used his special ability to intimidate us. In my opinion he is just stalling for time. Using these 2 methods he put himself in danger. Dangerous. At this point his eyes suddenly lit up and he slapped the armrest. Damn it. I say. The way he sent his clone over, wasn't it obvious that he was forcing someone to make a move? In the end those people didn't make a move and now he is angry. Lord Haohan Dragon King stood up, anxiously paced 2 steps and suddenly turned his head. That's why, since we are already in the trap, we have to fight our way out. First we have to catch that Li Yunxin. That brat must know about the Shinryu and the Old Things plan. We have to capture him and interrogate him, then we will have the upper hand. Only then will we have a chance to win. Chu Liao Dragon King and Chichuan Dragon King were dumbfounded by his words. North Sea Dragon King calmed down a little and quickly said, This Lord Haohan, don't be anxious, this matter isn't clear yet. What if it's this and we are wrong? Lord Haohan glared. Wrong? It's better to be wrong than to die. Are the 3 of you going to sit here and wait for death? North Sea Dragon King hurriedly waved his hand. No, I'm just saying, wait a little more. If what Lord Haohan said is true, this Li Yunxin delayed us here, then there will be movement at home for the next few days. At that time, wait for how long? A few days? Or a few months? North Sea Dragon King sighed. What, wait for at least At this point they suddenly heard a commotion coming from outside the central army. The 5 people in the seal looked in the direction of the sound, and saw a group of people suddenly emerging from the sea, appearing to the south of the central army. The people in the vast army quickly subdued them, but they discovered that the broken armor of the 16 people were all of different colors: red, blue, green, and yellow. This was not the color of overturned dye shop, but the color of the sea demon's blood. Haohan's army frowned, but North Sea Dragon King's eyes widened, and he suddenly stood up, and his words became more fluent. It's my people. After saying this he was slightly stunned. Haohan's army had already ordered in a low voice, "Bring them in." The leader of the 16 people was quickly brought in front of the imperial carriage. Haohan Dragon King waved his hand, and the miscellaneous people left, leaving only 6 people in the seal. The leader who was brought in saw North Sea Dragon King, and he immediately knelt down and kowtowed. His voice trembled. "Old Lord, something happened in the palace." Lord Beihai strode forward and bent down to wipe his face, wiping away the blood and dirt. He recognized this leader as General Jinlang of his palace. He shouted, "What happened?" But Haohan snorted and leaned his body on the throne. General Jinlang gritted his teeth and said, "The lifeless immortal sect people rebelled. They said that Old Lord and the Dragon Kings were defeated by Lu Ku, and that there are spies in the palace working with Lu Ku. They occupied our square pot mountain and sealed Huang. We killed our way out." North Sea Dragon King's eyes widened and he took 2 steps back, turning to look at Haohan in disbelief. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.